Hi everyone, how's it going? Good to see you all. We're going to go live right now, which is a little bit sooner than we usually do. Normally we're live every Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, but I'm going live a little bit early because I actually have a commitment later this evening. So I'm going to start a little bit early. We're probably going to have to end a little bit early, but I promise starting next week we'll have Mondays that are more devoted to this panel, just so that we can have a full panel and have everybody get a chance to express their opinion. Really good to see you all. It's nice to be here with all of you, and I appreciate the fact that you're all here. I guess I'll do a quick introduction. We've already got some people on the channel. Good to see you all. Hello to On Day 3, really wonderful channel. Hello to Kelly. Hi, good to see you, Kelly. Thank you very much for the props, Macintosh Pro. Really good to see you as well. Andrew is in the channel, so I'm going to let Andrew up in just a moment. But first, I just want to introduce what we're doing and what the rules are, and we'll go from there. This is the first Monday of the month, so what I've done in the past is just had an open stream. We're going to try and do some combination of that tonight. So we'll do a combination of an open stream and taking each person individually, and we're just kind of going to see how it goes, and we'll just get as far along as we can. Just so that you all know my background, here's just a little bit about me if you haven't been here before. First of all, I'm a university professor. I'm a journal editor of 2 scholarly journals in my field, but I am absolutely not in any theological field. And so you're welcome to ask any questions that you'd like to ask about my own beliefs. But yeah, and wow, there's already some people lining up. So all right, I'll go ahead and let the first person on. We'll start with Andrew and we'll go from there. Good to see you, Rex. Reexamination Show is a really great channel, and they're going to be on my channel doing a breakdown of their brand new triage argument, which I'm super, super excited to get into as well. All right, let's bring up Andrew and see what Andrew's got to say. Hey, Andrew, good to see you.
Hey Tavo, love your streams, loved your vids. This is probably I think my second or third time up on here.
Yeah, great to see you. And I probably have asked you this in the past, but oh, and Chase Teaches Physics is here. So Chase, I hope you hop up as well. The link to join the stream is pinged, so you should be able to all join. Oh, and Teach Yahweh is on. Oh, this is a really great channel. I think we're in for a really great discussion. But Andrew, I've been trying to be more diligent about asking this, but you are above the age of 18, is that correct?
Yes, 20
Okay,
years old.
great to see. What would you like to talk about?
Yeah, so I actually sort of had a question for you, maybe from your experience, or how do you kind of present things to atheists? So I have a situation where I'm actually talking to maybe two or three atheists or agnostics that are sort of all in the same situation. I don't really know how to approach it. It might take a minute to explain. Is that all right?
Oh, sure, sure. Yeah, we got time.
Yeah. So all of them are sort of very easily able to sort of take down those arguments of like, okay, like sure, maybe the gospels are reliable. Sure, maybe like the people maybe they thought they saw something, like they're willingly usually accepting of like the evidences like that. But it's sort of like in their methodology, just like because supernatural things don't happen, that anything is more likely than a supernatural explanation. And so they'll even resort to things like twin theory, where they'll be like, okay, listen, I know it really doesn't make sense, but it makes more sense than someone dying and rising again.
Yeah. So here's what I would say about that. I don't actually believe in anything supernatural. And I don't think that Christianity requires that. I know many Christians who don't believe in anything supernatural. The way I sort of see miracles is I see it more as unlikely events being fulfilled by providence rather than like God entering the picture and waving a magic wand. There have been some fascinating works that have been written on the physics of the quote unquote miracles of Christianity. Um, and the way I mean, I think this is kind of congruent with my overall worldview. As a physician, I've seen people make miraculous recoveries that defy medical explanations. Like, for instance, I've talked about this before, but there was a patient with widely metastatic renal cancer, right? And he opted to not get any treatment. He just prayed. That was not my recommendation. That would never be my recommendation to anyone. So don't anyone take that away from the channel as this. And I was an atheist at the time, and he ended up getting better. Now, I think it's okay to say that defies an explanation. I think it's okay to say, as academics, we should be cautious and not say there was something supernatural that happened. But but to me, he had what I would call a meaningful experience. He had an extremely unlikely event that came to pass after he prayed, which was that his widely metastatic renal cancer completely resolved spontaneously. Now that was I was an atheist at the time, and I left that experience as an atheist. And I said the same thing to him that I'll say to you now that I would tell myself as sort of like a scholar is, whatever experience he had, that was meant for him. It's not meant to be. And I think somebody ended up publishing his case in the medical literature. And there are other cases in the medical literature of people who have made spontaneous, seemingly miraculous recoveries. Now, when we say that, we say there's no medical explanation for this, and that's okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's supernatural. That just means that it's a very unlikely event. Now, I do think that scientism has its limits. There's three limits of scientism, and I'm quoting from Ludwig Wittgenstein when he said this. When we look at things that are beautiful, when we look at the field of morality or ethics, and when we look at the field of theology, we can't rely on scientism. But to me, there is no departure from the sciences needed when I take on the messages of Christianity. In other words, I don't have to imagine that God literally took a magic wand, pointed it at Jesus, and lifted him back up from the dead, right? And the reason why I don't believe that is because if you believe in an omnitemporal, omnipotent, omniscient God, then there would never be any reason why anyone would need to circumvent the laws of nature to fulfill God's will. Does that make sense? Right? Because God perceives everything in the universe. God orchestrated and architected all of the laws of nature, right? So it's not necessary for God to have that sort of one-off interventionist interaction with us. Now, I do think that there's another thing that has to be kept in mind, which is that science can understand anything in the universe, but as soon as something is outside of the event horizon of our universe, either partially or completely, we have to acknowledge that science is utterly unable to reconcile the existence of in other words, science can no longer at that point offer any kind of explanation, analysis, opinion, perspective. That's okay, right? Any scientist will tell you that we can perceive almost anything in the universe through the lens of the sciences. But once we go beyond the confines of the universe, either partially or completely, so an entity that transcends the universe, we are firmly outside of anything that science would predict. That's okay. That's not supernaturalism. That's not, I mean, I don't believe in ESP. I don't believe in anything paranormal. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I don't believe, honestly, I don't even really believe in aliens. I believe that there's life in the universe, but it's probably very simplistic life. So I don't, and many Christians would say the same thing. If there is an omnitemporal, omniscient, omnipotent God, that anything that we see as an intervention would be part of a manifestation of the laws of nature. And I'm not an authority on this topic, but people have written books about the physics of the miracles of Christianity. So I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, that's what I would say. I don't depart from the realm of the sciences. I don't ask anyone to accept anything non-scientific happened, and I don't personally ascribe to the idea that anything non-scientific has ever happened in the universe.
That's I guess like a very interesting thing of looking at it. Like I'm familiar with, for example, like Than from Expiring Philosophy, where he rejects the natural supernatural distinction, which I think makes some sense. I don't think I've ever heard of like that no departure even from really like scientific matters, but I guess like you can sort of say the natural supernatural distinction really is a little bit weak in my opinion, and I do think that rejecting it actually isn't that crazy of a thing to do. And sort of when you put it in those terms, it seems like it very much aligns to what you're saying. And the thing is that like I have a way to make sense of it in my head, but I find it hard to like present that to an atheist because they would just be like, well, you have that, but science doesn't predict someone raising from the dead is going to happen, and science isn't going to do this or that, and therefore it didn't happen like this, no matter how unlikely any other explanation is or doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I understand that, but let me explain it in a bit of a different way that might help a little bit. Let's say you're playing blackjack, right? And the dealer that you're playing against, um, knows he's sorted all the cards in the deck, right? So there was no shuffling. He knows how each and every card is going to fall. And imagine that he knows not only the order of the cards, but he also has perfect memory, right? So
Mhm.
every time the card falls, he knows exactly what it's going to be. You would never say to that dealer, you've got an ace up your sleeve. You're cheating somehow, right? Now, the reason why you wouldn't say that is because he knows all the rules and he's orchestrating all the rules and he knows how the cards are going to fall, right? It's kind of the same way with God. In other words, God wrote all the rules. God started the universe. God made all the rules of the universe. So, and it's anti-scientific. If I said there is a universe beyond our universe that has these rules, right? That would be anti-scientific, right? And the reason is because science stops at the confines of our universe. Now, I think there are specific scientific revelations that point towards God that are fairly recent. One of those is I think there's a degree of elegance of the fine tuning perspective that we've come to understand. So to me, science informs my theology rather than argues against it. That's the first thing. The second thing that I would say is there is this interesting veil of ignorance that surrounds our existence, meaning that and this is a little bit complicated, but just as there's an event horizon for the universe, there does seem to be an event horizon for what we're able to uncover as scientists about questions in the universe like cosmology and cosmogony, right? So here's just another way of explaining that. When we look back at the early universe, we do that by taking particles and slamming them together and creating increasingly powerful explosions, right? But as we get to earlier and earlier moments, resolving what actually existed at the earliest moments in the universe requires increasingly, marginally, incrementally, increasingly larger particle colliders, because you need higher and higher amounts of energy, right? If I was looking at the very first instant of the universe, I would need so much energy to peer into that first instant of the universe that I would need essentially all of the energy from our universe to just be able to look at the first moment of the universe. That to me makes it feel like there is someone who's hiding on the other side of that veil of ignorance. Does that make sense? And the third thing that I think is interesting is in the late 20 teens, we essentially resolved the black hole information paradox. Now, this is a topic that's too complicated to get into, and I hope perhaps that Chase, the physicist, will hop on and describe this in a little better detail. But the idea was that we resolved the black hole information paradox by understanding something about the universe that we'd never understood before, which is the law of conservation of information, right? So there is on the event horizon of the universe a topography that acts as a data field that preserves everything about what we do in the universe. Now, to me, from an atheist perspective, I was expecting that the universe is a large, entropic, chaotic thing where we flicker out of existence and then you can hardly say that we ever existed at all. But it seems like the universe is actually a storage matrix. It actually stores information. So those are three ways that my recent scientific learnings and our recent scientific learnings as humans has informed what we know about the universe and has informed my theology personally. I don't know if that really helps you, but I'll leave you with the thoughts of Saint Augustine, who said that science should always form the limit of our theological epistemic humility, meaning that we should never posit theological things that fly in the face of the science that we understand. In other words, that there should always be a boundary, and that was completely consistent with his theological worldview. That the sciences are the laws of God, and so we should always fit our theology around those laws. Sometime in the last century or so, we've gotten to this point where now science and religion are sort of at odds. They're not at odds to me, but they're at odds in the public discourse. And I think that's a real tragedy.
Yeah, I'm very much inclined to agree with you on that. Definitely, I came from a young Earth creationist upbringing, and so I would say it was a lot of work to get through past that whole like religion versus science type thing. But yeah, I definitely agree with you on that point. Thank you for your thoughts on it. It's actually a pretty interesting how you tackle it. I'm not
Well,
sure what I'll say to them, but you give me something to think about.
Yeah, I would always say look to some of the sciences first. But if I had all of the law, if I knew everything about the universe, everything where it came from, would I have the same theological worldview? I don't know. But this is what they're asking is to me a legitimately difficult and challenging question. So I wouldn't say that there is any easy answer. We should keep
Mhm.
learning about the sciences. We should never say this scientific fact is false because it conflicts with my religion. We should never say that. But I don't think that we should ever say science proves that religion is false. I don't think that's where we are right now with the sciences. I don't think we'll ever get there. But
Yeah. I guess then maybe I guess this is maybe one more question. If you have other guests, then go
no, no,
ahead
no,
and
no. Yeah, keep going. I tried to do around 15, 20 minutes per guest.
yeah. I'm trying to think of a good way to word this because, for example, let's say the resurrection of Christ, because that's a very popular talking point. You've released some very good videos on that. Um, with the resurrection of Christ, someone, and I assume that's a lot of my friends would be I guess in the sense that, would you consider it almost anti-science? You wouldn't consider it, I'm just assuming from you wouldn't consider it anti-scientific that a resurrection happened because God probably operated within the natural laws to make that happen.
Yeah, that's another way of saying where I'm at. Yeah.
So then it would just say that, hey, what we're positing here is that if we're positing this being that has these type of capabilities, then it's natural that this can happen, and that these laws that we think apply to physical, completely physical things, don't really apply to beings that may be immaterial or atemporal.
That's another way to say it, but let me put it to you this way. The traditional Christian narrative is that Jesus healed people, right?
Hmm.
Um, do I think that he supernaturally healed people? I don't know that that word supernaturally needs to be in that statement. If you're God, right, and you want to have those healing miracles happen, right, you can coordinate. Like we know spontaneous healings happen. We know that spontaneous healings without medical explanations happen, right? If you're God, you can just coordinate so the moment of those spontaneous healings are going to be the moments that those people interact with Jesus. And it would be the same exact result, you know. And in fact, you could even make the argument that Jesus sort of points to the Father in his healing miracles in saying that, right? I do nothing but by the Father, right? Is kind of one of the lines that Jesus says in John. And that is sort of an interesting reconciliation for that. But that's a way that at least the healing miracles can happen that don't involve anything supernatural. That doesn't mean that Jesus didn't do it. That means that he was precisely ordained to be there at the exact moment and the exact
Hmm.
place, exact time through his relationship with the Father that caused those healing miracles to happen. But it takes the word supernatural out of the equation for me. Now that applies to the healing miracles, which are for me as a physician much easier to explain. The resurrection itself is, more difficult to explain from purely physics based perspective, but people have tackled it. People have explained it. People have talked about. I think Frank Tipler wrote The Physics of Christianity, and he talked about some different explanations for the resurrection. Some of them being that Jesus was a time traveler. That and if there's nothing that in physics that contradicts the possibility of a wormhole forming, that there could have been a spontaneous wormhole. I mean, I don't want to speak to the physics too much in that perspective. I can speak to the medicine, so I can talk about Jesus healing miracles, but
Hmm.
I don't want to get too far outside my comfort zone. But to me, the pursuit of scientific knowledge always comes first. I'll say one more thing. I became a doctor as an atheist. I was diagnosed with terminal cancer as an atheist. I was, I recovered from that diagnosis, from a terminal diagnosis, without any intervention. I felt like from God, right? And
Hmm.
and after I recovered, I was still an atheist, right? That doesn't mean that God wasn't actually playing a role there, right? And that doesn't mean that God didn't play a role. And it doesn't really have to be supernatural. I had whatever experience I needed to have to give me the perspective that I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really good, and almost it lines a lot more with classical ideas of God was like the foundation of all reality, because I feel like a lot of times it's sort of seen as, the big man in the sky and the clouds, like almost like a Zeus type being who's just a little bit kinder sometimes, you
Yeah,
know.
I love being a physician. I loved being a physician as an atheist. Now that I'm somebody who has a proclivity towards belief, I feel like every time I look at an MRI or a CT scan, I'm getting to look at a piece of artwork, and the artist who created that piece of artwork was God. Now, that doesn't mean that God created the human body by pointing a magic wand and shooting a lightning bolt in.
Hmm.
It could just mean that the laws of physics gave rise to that form. But I'm still looking at one of the most complicated structures in the universe, and it's like looking at a painting, and the painter is all of creation. It's still
Hmm.
it's still equally humbling. It's still equally joyous, and it's still equally scientific.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate coming on to your stream.
Thanks, Andrew. And please come back by and let me know how the conversation goes with those three individuals. We'd love to get an update in a few weeks. And if you ever want to
Mhm.
have them join the stream, I'm happy to answer their questions as well.
Oh yeah, they'd be well. They're normal, so maybe it's a little bit better than some of the people that hop on your stream. They definitely do have a little bit of a tendency to gish gallop, but it's sort of like, I think it's just because they have so much they like to say, like about the topic, and they're passionate. So yeah, I think they'd be pretty good guests.
I would love that. Yeah, and they're welcome to join anytime. And this is not about debating people, so they're welcome
Yeah.
to challenge me with whatever perspective they want to give me. All right.
Hmm.
Well, nice chatting with you, Andrew. Yeah, yeah. Come back and let us know how it turns out.
All right. See ya.
Good to see you. Yeah. Professor Chimp, how's it going? Good to see you. Professor Chimp, you there with us?
Yeah, what's up?
Oh, thanks, Kefa. Good to see you as well. Thank you for the kind words, Kefa. Really appreciate it. And there's Robin is here. I think Robin's going to hop up later. A lot of other people are going to hop up later. So really glad that you all are here. I hope Chase hops up as well. Yeah. What would you like to chat about, Professor?
Yeah, so I guess something that was on my mind was so I know you mentioned that you're like kind of on the you said you have a proclivity towards belief, but you're not like totally certain.
Well, a proclivity makes it sound like I want to believe, and so maybe there's a better way to say it. Maybe a leaning.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, leaning, that makes sense. So I was just like, I guess a thought experiment or like a philosophical question I guess I had was let's say like God does exist. Would I guess I'm just thinking like if sorry, I don't want. I'm stammering. So if we had, so we have, let's say that Mormonism
And
is.
while you're putting together your thought, I do want to say you sent me a really kind email that did really mean a lot to me, Professor Chimp. So we had that 5-hour LDS stream that was really kind of a lot for me. So it really meant a lot to me that you sent me an email afterwards, just kind of encouraging me to keep the conversation going. And I'm really glad for that. So I'm glad you're here.
Oh yeah, I'm glad that helped you. Anyway, so let's say like you're right that Mormonism is false, which obviously I disagree, but we can get into that at a later time. Anyway, so let's say that Mormonism, like the claims of Joseph Smith, like his specific claims are were false, and but God is real. Would do you think that the people, do you think the members or his followers, do you think they still had like, would they still have a real authentic relationship with God, even if Mormonism's specific claims are inaccurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's why: because we are not good at understanding truths that are beyond the scope of our own experience, and we can rationalize things so that they fall within the scope of what we expect. Let me explain that in a different way. There's a bunch of people in a bunch of different religions who have testified very earnestly on this very channel that their theological beliefs were absolutely true, right? They can't all be right, right? I've had like Hindus on this channel who said Hinduism is the way. I've had Muslims on this channel who say that Islam is the way, LDS, like a lot of other people. So each one of them authentically, sincerely, genuinely believes that their religion is the one true religion, right? Now, I'm careful to parse out my language, so I hope I've never said that I think LDS is false. But but what I do believe is that we can rank order theological claims based on their verisimilitude using academic historiographical criteria, right? And that's the CTF argument. So what I do think that I would say as a scholar, as an academician, as a I would put my professional reputation on this, that LDS is probably one of the least likely theologies to be true. So that's not saying that it's false, but I think it's out of all the theologies that I've looked at, looking at 18 different world religions, it's almost certainly at the bottom or very close to the bottom. But that doesn't mean that I mean, I just spoke with Janice Hutchison, and we just did a Talking with Tavo video, and it was really great. But she's an author, and she encountered meaningful truths about Jesus while she was a Mormon. Now, the Mormons that she was surrounded by imprisoned her, right? Tortured her. They pushed her to the brink of death. She was lucky to escape that situation with her life. So I don't want to trivialize what she went through, but she will testify to this day that even though she thinks the LDS religion is false, that doesn't mean that she didn't have a genuine experience with Jesus while she was part of that religion. I don't know if that really makes sense, but hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just saying in the thought experiment, like if Mormonism, which I guess we could define what that is. I just use that to define all I guess denominations with falling within the tracing back to Joseph Smith, I guess.
Yeah, and I could put it in another way. To me, when I read Joseph Smith, I think there's okay, Kefa has a new song. Okay, I didn't realize that. When you're done with this stream, folks, I would encourage you to check out I would encourage you to check out Kefa's new song. It's really great. Yeah. But I think I lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. Go
you
ahead.
said that when you read Joseph Smith's writings.
Speeches. I mean, there are several reasons to think that I think Joseph Smith was. I really don't think he was divinely inspired, and I don't think there's anything that I find to be compelling when I read the Book of Mormon. Couple that with the fact that after that time period, he had behavior that, even according to people who were very, very close to him, was really, really unscrupulous. Couple that with also the fact that the Book of Mormon is the most anachronism-filled canon out of any religion. Couple, in addition to that, with that that there are clear failures in the record of Joseph Smith. There are like 3 different times that he could have said something differently, and he failed to do so, and he was proven by history to be very erroneous. So to me, there's a lot of reasons to doubt LDS, but it's much more likely that and thanks Macintosh Pro for pointing out the CTF video. I almost always talk about CTF a lot on this channel during every live stream. So yeah. But yeah, I think LDS is probably the most the religion with the lowest likelihood of being true. Now, some of the justifications for that claim don't fall neatly into CTF, but it probably deserves its own video. I think similarly, like Brigham Young, to say that he was divinely inspired, to me seems like a very flawed statement. He was arguing for death as a penalty for having interracial relations, right? And I think that wasn't really the LDS community didn't officially disavow that policy until like very late, like the 1960s or the 1970s. So very, very late. And even when they did so, it was not coupled with any kind of contrition. There was no statement of like, we're sorry, this was a mistake. So yeah, that it's hard for me to imagine that any of that being divinely inspired, to be honest.
Well, I think a lot of members will tell you that there have been I guess there have been mistakes and very regrettable action, like statements like that, which you would say, yeah, that wasn't divinely inspired, but there are other reasons to think he was. But I don't want to focus too much on that because I want to focus on, just for the sake of argument. And you already kind of answered it. You already said, like, even if LDS was, like, even when she was a member of the offshoot that was unfortunately victimizing her, which is that's unfortunate. I can read, I'll look into that, or look into her
She
story.
was victimized by several different LDS communities, which is also unfortunate. She's 95 years old now. She's written several books on her ordeal, but I would encourage people to stick around to the channel because I've got the video with Miss Hutchinson, who's a really great author, coming out soon. But go ahead, Professor Chimp, sorry.
Yeah, and just a quick side note, the Book of Mormon, I think it does mention offshoots that like victimize people, and they go off the rails like completely. So like, I'm just saying, like, I think LDS, the mainstream, would totally condemn that. Which I don't think you're saying that's the whatever. But you did say, like, you do think that she had an authentic relationship or experiences with God and Jesus. You were saying that, right?
Yeah, but it was not through the Book of Mormon. She was actually, it's a very compelling story, but she was reading the King James version of the Bible at an LDS event when she really felt God's presence in a very meaningful way, and that sent her on a path that ultimately, and she said that was the moment that she fell in love with Jesus and really fell in love with the writings of Jesus. And she'll be telling the story on the channel coming up very soon. Again, we just recorded the video, but I think her whole point is that there was nothing that LDS did other than putting the Bible in front of her, right? There was nothing that LDS did that contributed to that journey, but she makes the point to so that we know that people who are in Mormon can be having, who are in LDS, can be having real experiences with Jesus. I think, to me, the problem with LDS is when you start tacking on like Brigham Young and Joseph Smith, and you're not parsing out that there are degrees to which their authority ought to be less than Jesus, then that becomes really problematic. Like, we had Jonah on the channel, and he's like a really high level LDS debater, right? And his whole point was the Book of Mormon is so Christian, and there's so much Christology in the Book of Mormon, and it's so based on Jesus, and everything is like, towards Jesus. And if you believe in Jesus, you should read the Book of Mormon because it's so much about Jesus. And I'm like, if you take the teachings of Jesus and you start tacking on things to those teachings, that is less Christological than what you started with, right? If you're saying, here's the teachings of Jesus, but you need to add on all this stuff to it, that becomes problematic, right? So I thought that was, now the other reason why I would urge caution is because there are other academicians who have commented on this. That was not always the approach of the LDS community. Like, for a long part of its history, Jesus was not strongly emphasized in LDS teachings and even in the LDS missionary work, right? It's only recently that Jesus has become sort of a closer part of the sales pitch, so to speak. And I'm not being glib or dismissive in saying that, but I am saying that LDS like incorporated the teachings of Jesus more centrally in the sales pitch more recently. That's a very recent development in the last few decades. And that, to me, is part of the problem of the whole thing.
I mean, you do have like Joseph Smith, and I'm not an expert in this, but you do have like Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery seeing Jesus together and reporting to and stuff like that. And it's like, but I was just wondering, like, let's just say like that Mormonism is incorrect, but Jesus is real. For the sake of argument, I know like there's, you added stipulations to that, but let's say, would would it, like, I know you said like you think that the Book of Mormon is like tacking on teachings, um, but would it? Do you think that because people do have real they do have real experiences from, or they perceive to be real experiences from the Book of Mormon itself, not just the Bible. So like, would that be imaginary? Would that be like what do we make of that?
Kelly, just to point this out, I, Professor Chimp is LDS, so that's kind of why we're talking about it. I actually don't want to make too much more LDS content. I feel like I need to make at least one video about it, but Janice tells her own story in her own words, but that's kind of why we're talking about LDS at this point. But I don't want to make that too much of what the channel's about because I don't like to be pejorative. Sorry, Professor Chimp, what's your question again?
So I was just saying, I know you aren't definitively saying that LDS is false, but I'm just saying, if it was the case that it was false, but Jesus is real, for the sake of argument, would the experiences that people have with the Book of Mormon itself, rather than like the Bible, would that be imaginary? Would that be like, what do we make of that?
I never tell anyone that their experience is imaginary. If somebody has a really moving theological experience, that experience is there in their lives for a reason, and they're meant to have that experience. I I honestly, but here's the thing: if Jesus showed up to me tomorrow in my room and said, I'm Jesus. Here's a new teaching. It's that it's okay to lie to people, right? I think I would like to think that I would be like, is this just something that I am perceiving subjectively, or is this something that I need to push on other people? Because I'll tell you, in a vacuum, I would still tell people, I would say the same thing now. And let me issue this to you as a thought experiment. If I'm somebody who follows the Quran and the teachings of Jesus, am I closer or further away from somebody who is following just the teachings of Jesus exclusively? Right? I think the answer is obvious. I'm sort of further away from Jesus, from the teachings of Jesus, than somebody who's following the teachings of Jesus only. Right? Does that make sense? So if somebody says, and we've had a lot of people on this channel who have had themselves personal, theologically compelling experiences. I've never had one. I've never heard, God has never spoken to me. I've never had anything remotely woo or supernatural. Like, I don't believe in love at first sight, like none of that stuff. Right. So I would like to think that if I had an experience, that the first thing that I would do is look to the scriptures to sort of contextualize that experience. And I don't think I would like go off and write a book about how everyone, needs to recontextualize their understanding of Jesus based on what I would say. In other words, even if I had a personal experience, if it contradicted the scriptures, I would like to think that I would be able to contextualize my personal subjective experience in that way. Right? Because I mean, the scriptures say that there's going to be false prophets, right? And it gives us a litmus test, right? It says that there will be false prophets. Some of them will be able to do acts of wonder, and that doesn't mean that they're necessarily aligned with the teachings of Jesus. So to me, if I had a personal experience, I would probably share it with some people, but I don't think I would be like, this is an indication to not follow the teachings of Jesus, or to follow them less, or to follow them in a different way, or to re-understand them. I would like to think that I would have that wherewithal and that emotional focus to be like, my subjective experience should not circumvent or transgress the relevant scriptural resources. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I would just say, I do think that not all, obviously, and obviously you're correct that there are false teachers and prophets and stuff, and false Christ, antichrist, and all that good stuff, or bad stuff. But I was just thinking, like, if the experience, like, if the teachings, like, like putting aside all of the, and I know we're almost out of time, but like putting aside all of the problematic stuff, if you look at the outcomes in people's lives who are LDS, like not the offshoots, obviously, and the extremists, but like the data on this is pretty dang solid, that people, and I'm not trying to brag here. I'm just saying, if you're looking at the outcomes in people's lives, like their charity, their love towards other people, their service and stuff like that, it's like it improves in LDS. So it's like, and I'm not saying, and I definitely think that people's experience with Jesus and God is real in other religions. I do think that. I'm just saying, if LDS was false, then why do we see, and Jesus is real, why do we see all these? And obviously we can debate like how strong the evidence actually is, but like it just seems like it's improving people's lives. So it's like, why would that be the case? Is it just a useful fiction? It's like, I don't know how to make of that. Like that's my thought.
Well, I mean, I think Max is in the queue, and I think Max would point out that religious participation does improve people's lives, often in very measurable, very important ways. My concern is this: once you leave LDS, 60% of the time, you wind up becoming an atheist, right? Some of my favorite atheists who we've engaged with on this very channel include like, what's his name? Mr. Deity, right? James Fodor, right? These are great atheists. They're lovely people, but they both came from LDS. And as a human being, it's hard to parse out when you have a negative experience with religion from every religion is false. Does that make sense? In other words, there is a tendency, if my girlfriend breaks up with me and says, you're too ugly, right? Then I'm going to go home and cry in my pillow and say, no person is ever going to love me, right? And the reason for that is because we're not, as humans, we're not good at contextualizing our experiences in the context that they actually occupy. In other words, most people who leave LDS, who say, okay, this religion is bunk, don't go to Christianity. Most of them become atheists, right? And the reason for that is because once they discover that they can be fools, once they realize that religion is capable of fooling people, they often just say, well, now I've seen the flaws of religion, I'm going to turn all the way to atheism. That's my reason why I think it's important to speak out against LDS, because I think when people leave LDS, they become atheists, and they become sometimes very strident, very persuasive atheists.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I know we're out of time, but I would just say, I think one reason for that is because I think that creedal Christianity, it's specifically has a lot of flaws to it, like specifically philosophically. But we can get into that later at some point. Like you have other guests here. So
well,
yeah, it was good
Tim,
talking.
I'm actually really genuinely fond of you, and I'm really genuinely fond of talking to you. And if you wanted to like have a longer conversation, I would really welcome that. Like, so if you wanted to do a longer Talking with Tavo series, because I feel like every time we talk, we get, we don't quite get all the way there. And if you want to talk more, the offer is open, and I'd really love that. And I would genuinely love to chat with you anytime you want. I'll block out as much time as you would like to just have a one-on-one conversation with you, and we can either live stream it or we can just talk one-on-one. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, it sounds great. I'll email you. Thank you, man.
Yeah. It's really good to see you again. I won't be there tonight. Sometimes I see you later in the evening at the Let's Talk by Warriors band channel.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be there tonight because I have a thing that is going to take up all the rest of my evening as soon as I'm done streaming. But it's really good to see you. I hope we chat again.
Yeah, see you, man.
Okay. I'll email you too. All right. Good to see you. Kenisha, I'm really glad that you're here. I've been on your channel once or twice before, but you've not been over here. So I'm really glad that you're here, and I'd love to chat with you whenever. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. Yeah.
I'm glad to be here. Yeah, I know that you have invited me a few times, and I apologize for how long it's taken, but I'm glad to finally be here.
Yeah, having said that, this is not the ideal channel, the ideal format for how I'd like to talk to you, because I'd love to do a Talking with Tavo series video with you, which kind of is, these are like sort of 15 to 20 minute conversations. And I feel like if we had a longer conversation, that might be great. Your channel content is really intriguing and super fascinating.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, and whatever works for you, as long as I'm available, and obviously not streaming or anything, then I'm totally okay with making something work with you. Love what your conversations have been about. I've watched your streams a few times, yeah.
No, that's flattering. I'm glad you've been here a couple times. Yeah.
I actually saw you a while back. This was like, I think I was still pregnant, to be honest. I think I was close to giving birth when I first saw your channel.
I recall seeing you super early in my. I've only been on YouTube now for about a year and 2 months.
Yeah, it was this year for sure. It was close to when I was getting ready to have my second daughter.
Yeah, and how old is she now?
She just turned 4 months yesterday.
Oh, congratulations! Oh, that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
thank you. She's growing so fast. I swear she's already bigger than my 3-year-old. It feels like that. But yeah, thank you.
And you've done some debates with on day 3, and I'd love to like. I don't really get into Trinity debates on this channel, but if you wanted to, like, I'd be happy to like maybe moderate a debate if you ever wanted to do that.
Like sorry, we're eating dinner. My daughter's talking. Hold on, sweetheart. Like a formal
No.
debate. I don't even know the guy, to be honest. He came on my channel one time, but I don't know who he is.
Oh, well, I'd be interested in hosting a Trinity debate. I don't know if that's something you'd be interested in.
Actually, I'm taking a turn on my channel. I was literally just talking to a friend this morning, on his channel about that. It's tiring having the same conversations literally day in and day out. And my vision and where I'm trying to take my channel is more focusing on the kingdom and really going through each text and just learning, just being a student and literally just learning as much as I possibly can over and over. And because I just don't like the circular arguments that just continuously run out of the same words. The God's word has so much more than arguing about it all day. And since it has turned into, unfortunately, a lot of arguments, it's just not worth it. That means it's time for me to move on because God's not commanding us to argue with believers over things. We're supposed to come together and reason, and which is what I always try to aim to do.
Well said. I really love that perspective. I think that's really important and really wonderful. And that's one of the reasons I don't get too into like Trinity stuff on this channel specifically. But,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, it's just I have literally thousands of people that I talk to on a regular basis. And I feel if I continue to do this, not saying I will never talk about it again. I love talking about it. I really do. But it's not being fruitful the way that God has for my life. And I can feel the tug on, okay, it's time to set that aside. We got other things we need to get done. You know what I'm saying? Just like if you were in your house and you wanted to paint all day, well, you still got to cook and you still got to clean. There's other things that need to be done, and you can't neglect that just because you're passionate about the painting.
yeah. Well said. I mean, I dig that. Just to quickly answer this question from WTY615. Yeah, I'm trying to sort of answer chat questions too. So if you have a question for me, just put it in the chat, and sometimes I miss the chat questions. And Dr. Kurt is asking if we're gonna have a panel. Yeah, I'll probably open it up pretty soon. I think what I'll do is after Kenisha comes on, I'll probably just let everybody else on, and then so anyone who wants to join now, I'll probably open up the chat. We've been doing like one-on-one conversations, but it's kind of like a hybrid where we do like a few one-on-one conversations, and then we kind of open it up to the whole panel. But yeah, Kenisha, I agree with you. I think that's really good. Like I did that 5-hour stream with LDS, and that to me was very argumentative. And if I had to do that every week, I think I'd be really down on doing the channel. I'm not an arguer. I'd rather discuss. I'd rather at least leave there some room for common ground.
Same.
Macintosh Pro is saying something really good. If you type Q for question and you then make your questions, this is helpful. I like this Macintosh Pro. So, but if somebody does want to ask me a question, I will happily answer it. Maybe tag it as question for Tavo, or just tag my name or something, and then I'll try and answer your question. But you've got a great channel, Kenisha. There's a lot of things that I've learned a lot from like being a fly on the wall in a lot of your chats as well.
Thank you, brother. Yeah. So what are your, I know I've heard enough of yours to know that you were not a believer and now you're more really researching and looking into the things of Scripture, and I've heard a little bit of your, I guess, testimony. So where are you at now? Are you kind of digging more into historical things? Are you looking at prophecies? Are you looking at character, like how to actually walk this out? Like, where are you at right now in your walk?
Yeah, good question. There's sort of a difference between like Tavo, the YouTuber, and where I am, right? Like, so for instance, like I don't talk about this a lot on the channel, but like every one of the things that's sort of influencing my theological transition from non-believer to believer, which is still ongoing, is that over time I do feel like I've been personally a little bit transformed over the last 2 years. And there are some people who are personally in my life who are like helping sort of to shepherd that journey. And so that's been really meaningful. And so I would say that even though I have sort of calibrated uncertainty in my purely academic, sort of dispassionate perspective about Christianity, even though I have those uncertainties in my own life, I am very certain that every day that I've taken a step closer to being more aligned with the teachings of Jesus, I've been a better person, maybe a kinder person. I've been transformed. I've been more gentle. And that's something that I don't talk about a lot on the channel. But I will say that I'm still somewhere in the spectrum of having some calibrated uncertainty. From the standpoint of the CTF argument, comparative theologically, looking at things, I'm fairly certain that if there's any religion that's true, it's a religion based on Jesus. From my own personal perspective, how certain am I that there is a God? Um, that's probably about 55, 60%. My certainty that if there's a religion that's true, it's a religion based on Jesus, that's probably around 80, 85%.
I think the fact that you are searching is very it's a smart move. I'll just say that. And I think what's even more important is that everybody examines. So a lot of people get comfortable. They grow up in the church and they get comfortable. Yeah, I know all the songs. Yeah, of course I know that verse. Heard a sermon on it 20,000 times, but they stop actually applying the word to their life, which is something that I've been really reflecting on for a while now. And then I'm constantly trying to examine myself. And even in my understanding, that's why I say on my channel all the time, my understanding is not set. I could change my mind very happily at the drop of a dime. If I'm wrong, I want to be corrected. And what I find, unfortunately, with a lot of the people, this is part of the reason why, too, I'm just like, I'm done with the same people, at least talking to the same people over the same things, is because you come to a realization that they're not there to actually reason and like discuss and have a conversation. They're there to win an argument. And God's word never commands us, hey, go win an argument. Paul, in fact, in the book of Acts, I recently just did a whole stream where I just did the whole book of Acts, and Paul says numerous times, I challenge everybody in here, go count how many times he says, I went to this town, went to these people, and I sat down and I reasoned with them. So what does that take? Does that take you screaming, yelling, calling people dumb, making clips to show how you demolish this person or ruin this person's life or career? No, that's nothing Christ-like. And I guarantee God, the God of the Bible, is not smiling, looking down and saying, wow, I'm just so proud of you, how you handle this. Like, I'm so proud of you. Like, so if we can't see God literally joyful at the way that we're handling this stuff, then something's wrong. And I think only true believers, people who truly care, who have the knowledge of the doctrine, a lot of people do. I'm talking about people whose lives have been transformed by the word of God. They're going to be convicted. And this isn't going to be a habit that they do. I can understand like making little comedy things sometimes. Like, it's just funny. We all need a laugh. God is not so serious that he doesn't laugh. You know what I'm saying? But when that's all you are is like trying to ruin people and win an argument, you've forgotten what it's all about in the first place. So I'm really trying to distance myself from people on all sides. I could care less what title you have, that have this type of behavior, because it's ruining the community of God.
I mean, that's beautiful. I agree. And even though I'm agreeing with you, I can't say that I have exemplified what you're saying. Like, I really felt like, honestly, like, Jackie, who's a good friend of the channel, we had a really long conversation after I did that 5-hour LDS debate, because it was, by the way, people are commenting in the chat that you got a happy sounding baby there. So obviously the motherhood comes first. So I'm glad you're here, but your baby does sound really happy. And thanks, Macintosh Pro. Please support the channel. If you haven't already, go over and Teach Yahweh's channel. It's a really great channel. I would recommend people check it out. But I have definitely been guilty of transgressing what your advice is, even though I'm really resonating with it right now. I think a good example was during the LDS stream. I felt like that took on a tone that was too argumentative, and I often sort of wrestle with that as how do I sort of turn an argument into a conversation. I think that could be challenging.
Well, brother, that's the thing about it, is that we all do it. The point isn't that who does it and who doesn't do it. The point is the person who repents and turns from those ways. So like I said, if you, and like scripture says, those who practice lawlessness, means it's habitual. You're doing it consistently. This is your life. This is what you do. This is how you represent. It's a habitual lawlessness. That's what's dangerous about these platforms, is if you have no self-control, which is the fruit of the Spirit, then you're going to lose control. And you are falling further and further away from God, which, honestly, look at the greatest people in the Bible, the greatest stories that we read about. And we think, wow, I wish I had faith like this. Wow, I wish I had a heart for God like this. Wow. Do you not read how easy it was for them to fall because of pride?
Yeah.
So, people tend to think only the really, maybe 89-year-olds that have done this a long time, they got it down, or people who are super educated, they got it down, or people, it's no, this is it's a reality. And that's why the Bible says, when you fall, XYZ. Doesn't say if, it's a possibility. It says, when this happens, this is how I want you to react. This is the instructions for when you're in the scenario. When you're in this emotion, this is what you need to do. And so it's not that the God that we serve is so far beyond us that he can't comprehend anything. It's the fact that he does know. And so he gives us instructions on how to handle it. And again, my personal beef with these conversations is that I think maybe less than 1% of people who come on the platforms actually have an idea of how to have self-control. And that's something that is actually simple. We make it complicated, but it's not simple to say, it's not hard to say, you know what? I'm just going to refrain from talking to you because it's not going anywhere. That's wisdom. That's what wisdom is. It's not knowing a bunch of stuff. It's knowing when to apply the knowledge that you have. And part of that is self-control.
Yeah. I try to also remember that I'm probably never gonna, quote unquote, convert someone. I'll probably never change someone's mind. But I do think that, I do think minds will be changed and hearts will be changed. But the authority to do that is never, it's never going to be because I laid out some reasons for somebody.
Well, you'll get there. We'll all get there. It's not a matter of if it's possible. It's a matter of, are you obedient? Are you going to actually apply what works, or are you just going to second guess and question it all day?
Yeah. When it comes to myself, I definitely second guess and question all day. But it's but we're all on paths, and we're all getting there. And I'm really grateful for every conversation that I've had on this channel, including this one. And sometimes maybe the only heart, the only mind that's going to change because of a conversation that I have is my own, and that's okay too. Yeah. Well, let's do this. We've been chatting. Oh, anything else? Let's give another couple of minutes, and then we'll start opening up to everybody else, because I've got some really great folks who want to chime in.
No, open it up, brother. Just I came at the wrong time. I thought.
Oh no. I'm glad you're here. Anything else you want to chat about, and then we'll start opening it up.
No, you can go ahead and open it up, brother. I know how it goes. Go ahead and open it up.
Okay, yeah. What we've been doing is we do. Oh, and I know that TBS was in there, and then he left, and I know Dr. Kurt was talking about popping up, and that's always welcome. But now everybody's on, and I guess what do we do? Maybe some introductions. I'm really glad that I'm really glad that you're all here. But why don't you start by introducing yourself? Let's start with Truth Matters.
Yeah, what's up, bro?
Good to see you. You're over 18, right?
Yes, of course.
Oh no, I just want to make sure. I generally try to ask that of everybody. But yeah.
Uh-huh.
And what's your theological background?
Well, Mr. Tavo, that's not the first time we talked so many times before. Yeah. So I'm a
I know
Muslim.
I can't remember. I may be confusing it with you. I want to say you're Muslim, but you may be Hindu. I apologize that I'm not
No, I'm a Muslim. Yeah.
Muslim. Okay. Well, no, glad you're here, and hopefully we'll have a nice conversation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm really glad that Chase is here too. Why don't you introduce yourself really quickly, Chase? Chase is a theoretical physics grad student doing some really, really interesting research. So I'm glad that Chase is here as well. Okay, and I think Chase is maybe probably just away from the microphone right now. And Max is here as well. Glad you're here, Max.
Thanks.
And Jared is here too. So let me open up. Jared, can I ask how old you are?
Yes, I'm 44.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure you're over 18. So,
That's my friend.
And what's your background, Jared?
Well, I am a follower of Jesus. I believe in the scriptures. I believe in God the Father and his human Messiah. And I believe in being a disciple of Jesus and following in his footsteps. So that's a short breakdown there.
It's an admirable set of guiding principles. And I think Chase is back now. So Chase, if you want to introduce yourself really quick.
Yes, I'm Chase. I'm very sorry if you guys were talking to me. I got a phone call at the worst time and had to step out. And so,
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah.
So I am a working theoretical physicist. I work in quantum gravity attempts, string theory, causal sets, cultural dynamical triangulations, a few different fields of quantum gravity, but I'm mostly worried about I mostly think about the structure of space-time and how it pertains to different cosmologies.
Yeah, and it's really wonderful research, and I'm glad you're here. And we've talked over email, and you're going to be on the channel on I think September 4th or something.
Yeah, I think that's what we decided.
Yeah, we're doing a talking with Tavo thing on that.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, so we usually do like the one-on-one conversations for 15-20 minutes each, and then the last hour or so on the first Monday of the month, especially when it is the first Monday of the month is usually our mega panel. But yeah, we're opening up, so anyone can ask me anything. So I'll open it up to anyone on the panel can ask me a question.
I've got a question, Tavo.
Sure.
Or actually, so in the past, you've talked about, I think it's like epistemically privileged is the term you used to describe God. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, I think you're talking about my a lot of the conversations that I had with objective ethics about whether or not morality is subjective. I suggest that if there is a God, by definition, that God would be more epistemically privileged to answer moral questions than we are.
So I've seen you sort of deploy that. When people try to criticize the Old Testament, you would basically say, even if it seems immoral to us, God would know things we don't know. So that could explain the apparent discrepancy between what we would think and what God would think, like something like that.
That's close to what I try to say. I try to sort of so I mean, it depends on what the topic is. One of my points I often make about the Old Testament is that it's there are different types of language in the Bible. I try to think of each book of the Bible as a different book, a different topic, written with a different voice. And there is sort of moral maximum language in the Bible in some passages, but in other passages, the intention is historical documentation. In other passages, the intention is to sort of shepherd humanity to a higher plane of morality. In other passages, there's like it's a sort of imprecatory poetry. So it depends on what the passage is, and then how we're going to read that passage.
So if we're talking about like the law of Moses, this is supposedly from God himself, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So there's passages about like executing homosexuals, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you would say that would be for a greater purpose we can't understand, even though it seems wrong to our sensibilities.
No, I wouldn't say that. If somebody's making the argument that God's morality is flawed because this was a rule in the Old Testament, I would say, well, let's go passage by passage and look at the language and see what it says and evaluate that passage from the standpoint of textual criticism. But I would say that if your argument is that God is morally flawed, then the argument has to be tempered by epistemic humility in terms of understanding that we are at a different epistemic plane and therefore different epistemic privilege than God. And just to clarify, there's two reasons for that. One reason is, as we look at the world around us, there does seem to be different degrees of moral thoughtfulness, right? So, and that does tend to scale up with intelligence. So when we look at ants, for instance, we wouldn't think of ants as having much morality, but when an animal is capable of understanding suffering in another animal, that's sort of a different conversation, and we as humans are sort of a different plane. And the analogy that I usually give is, there's two analogies that are probably relevant. One is the analogy of, like, if I flood an anthill, is that a morally justified action? To the ants, that might be an action that causes suffering. Those ants, if they had the capacity to judge me, would judge me as having committed a moral transgression. But my motivation might be because there's a field that's on fire and I'm trying to douse the fire in the field, right? Another justification might be because this is an invasive species of ants. So the other analogy that I often give is the analogy of like a muscle fiber, right? When I exercise, I am, after the exercise, I am in better shape, right? But but there are individual myocytes, muscle cells, that undergo apoptosis, right? From their standpoint, I've done something that damages them, right? From the standpoint of the organism, I've become more healthy. But yeah, but it really depends on the issue. But I'm personally kind of agnostic on like, if you say, is this law in the Old Testament, was this necessary? Is this a good thing? It becomes very challenging for me. Like, there's certainly some passages in the Old Testament that are flawed, right? That are, or at least, I shouldn't say flawed, that are at least not morally maximal. But there are other passages in the Old Testament, and again, Scripture interprets Scripture, right? There's like a large swath of the book of Jeremiah indicates that the Old Testament covenant, the covenant of Moses, is not meant to be the ultimate covenant, that there are meant to be other understandings, other relationships with God that supersede that. I don't know if that really answers your question.
Okay, so I'm just thinking about the analogies you're using. Like if a human is flooding ants, then we could say, okay, maybe that's for the good from the human's perspective, but not from the ants. Wouldn't that logically mean we would be able to criticize God because it's not in our best interest, it's in his best interest?
But we don't know what his best interest is.
Sure.
Right? In other words, let's say I'm God and I create a universe, and that universe has conscious entities within it. Who is in a better standpoint to reconcile what happens in that universe in terms of the morality of a specific intervention in that universe? Is it one of the individual conscious entities in the universe, or is it me from the overview perspective, who understands everything about not only the universe itself, but the harmonies within that universe, and also the mind states and emotional states of each and every conscious actor within the universe? I would argue that, the God of that universe, in this case, me, would be epistemically privileged from that perspective.
I mean, sure, but you can say, so humans know things that ants don't know, but we don't always act in the interest of ants. You say we could if we wanted to because we know how to, but we don't. So wouldn't that analogy leave room for doubt that this being is actually acting in our interests?
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made for God being immoral. I just don't think it's a very strong argument. But I mean, people have had that debate. I think Dr. Kurt, who's in the chat, has had that debate with people, arguing that God is like, even if there is a God, God is more likely an omnipotent demon with malicious intents. I don't think that's a strong argument, and the reason why is because, why would God like emphasize things like honesty and respect for life in the relevant scriptural passages? Why would kindness be so strongly advocated?
Okay. All right. I mean,
I hate to interrupt real quick. I'm new to this, so you kind of open
Oh
it
no,
up for
anyone can
everybody to
chime
kind of
in.
talk.
Yeah,
Oh,
hop
okay.
in, Kenisha. Anyone can chime in.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt the gentleman, Max.
that's fine. You can talk. I got enough to say for now.
Okay. No, I just had a like a question / thought / statement. So Tavo, how serious do you think you're taking this right now? Like at this point in your life, is it kind of like on the back burner? Does it meditate on your mind every day? That's like my first question to you.
I would say I pray every night. I probably pray for about an hour every night, usually kind of walking around and just kind of, and then sometimes I pray with Jackie. But I really take this question that Max is asking seriously. There are things in the Old Testament that seem to me to be morally problematic. It's hard to sort of acknowledge them, right? They're like it would be wrong for me to say that to give him or anyone really the impression that this stuff doesn't bother me. It does bother me, I don't know that gives me a clear perspective on where to land with it. Also, I sort of, the way I kind of look at it is through the CTF framework, which is, comparative theological, right? And the way I sort of think of that is like, there are a lot of books from ancient times that have different types of morality. Which is the most morally impugnable is sort of a different question than is any work perfect. I also tend to think of this through the lens of like just ancient times, things were more cruel. We tend to think that humans were animals and then we developed a civilization, right? And we became less animalistic. But that was a gradual, marginal, incremental process. It wasn't like immediately, like once, it wasn't like humans were, all of a sudden we lived in cities and we understood morality. Complex moral thought, I would argue, really only came about in around 400 or 500 BCE. I think before that, really kind of moral abstractions weren't as well understood. So I think some of the brutality of the ancient world is, I don't want to say understandable, but it's factually hard to get rid of. I don't know if that really answers your question, Kenisha, but
No, yeah, no.
I think Max is asking a legitimately hard question, and it would be a mistake for me to say I don't have an answer, but it would also be a mistake for me to say I have an easy answer.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. The reason why I'm asking is because it is, I believe the most important question that all of us can ask in our lives is there a God? And if so, who is he? What does he say? What does he want? Why am I here? Those questions that we should be asking ourselves. And I do honestly think every human being has asked themselves that at some point in their life. And, we all are going to have death come to us. I mean, you were kind of explaining a little bit about your near death, as you were an atheist, being so sick, I would say. And I think that I rather believe and search wholeheartedly for the true God with all my heart and get it wrong 5 million times and then end up getting it right than to never search at all and then die and find out like, wow, like he's real and I made a huge mistake that I can't undo. And so that's why I just kind of wanted to ask you that question, because I was a non-believer as well. So my biggest thing that kind of drew me to this is there is some obsession with this guy Jesus. Like I wasn't raised in a church, didn't know Peter from Paul, literally, and I just sat there and really for a long time as I'm going through the scriptures thinking like, what is this obsession with Jesus? Like I don't get it. Who is this guy? What is he? Why is he so important? He's in every religion. He's in even occult practices, like his name, like everything on movies. You hear his name as a cuss word. And that truly weighed on me to really zoom in and focus. Well, there has to be something with Jesus. And thank God that I really started examining that and going through the scriptures. But I was just curious. Sorry for taking up so much time.
No, anyone can chime in with anything. So feel free. Max, how are you feeling? Any other follow-up questions?
So there is one other thing. I know there was a book that you suggested. It was about the banality of evil by
Hannah Arendt.
Yeah. So it seemed like one of the main lessons would be to trust your own autonomous reasoning rather than simply listening to an authority. And so we have this position that sometimes we hear things that seem to be from God that conflict with our own moral reasoning. We're going to erode our own autonomous judgment, which could be dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly aligned with that set of lessons. I also think that moral humility is necessary. But have you ever read the Kitab-i-Aqdas of Baha'i?
No.
It's a lovely book. I recommend everyone read it. It's a really great book. But but it a lot of religious books like the Guru Granth Sahib of Sikhism is another book that I really love. But a lot of religious canons are much more moral legislation. I don't think Jesus is giving us moral legislation, right? He's not saying like, you got to do this, you got to do this 5 times a day, you got to bow down in this direction, you got to point this direction when you do this, you got to wash your hands this way. It's not, I'm not, wash your hands, definitely, that's absolute. But my point is that Jesus and other people have commented on this as well. The teachings of Jesus are not moral legislation; they're moral evaluative criteria, right? So you're meant to sort of take them, internalize them, and I don't think they're meant to replace your moral thinking. I don't think they're meant to replace contemplation. I don't think Jesus is saying follow these rules and shut up and calculate, right? That's not the answer. I think Jesus is saying here are the lessons. You can internalize these lessons as moral evaluative criteria without subjugating yourself to a specific regimen of moral lessons. But yeah, there are people who are I think are too dogmatic and too doctrinal in their interpretation of some of the relevant scriptural interpretations. And to those people, I would say Jesus clearly parses out what the right thing to do is in a lot of these cases. And his point is always like, don't strain the gnat and swallow the camel, right? Don't worry so much about like a splinter in somebody else's eye so much that you're missing the plank in your own eye. Take the plank out. I think the lessons are always sort of clearly like err on the side of kindness, love your neighbor as you love yourself, love God, but don't get too into the weeds in terms of like moral legislation. So I don't know that Hannah Arendt there in your recapitulation of her teachings is saying anything that is too different from what Jesus would be saying. I don't know if that's helpful, but
I guess I see where you're coming from. You're not. I guess you're more like internalizing something that helps you make your own decisions rather than following something strictly. Is what
yeah. I think the argument from the Bible is love, express kindness. Be kind to each other, be good, but don't but we're past the period of like follow these 513 rules. And I think the rules were important. I think they kept the Jewish people cohesive and together in a time that was really brutal and very very challenging. But I think after like abstract moral thought was generated, and then after it spread to the masses, then Jesus was like, okay, here's some moral rules. And that's why I think Jesus is relevant in several disciplines and in terms of Jesus being cited directly and constructively by a lot of atheists like Hannah Arendt.
Mm-hmm.
So do you put
I could have a comment on the topic at hand whenever you're finished.
Yeah, sure, Jared. Yeah, chime in, Jared. And Golden Arm is here too. Nice to see. I think this is your first time on the channel, Golden Arm. I might be mistaken, but good to see you, Golden Arm. And by the way, I Fish in a Tie had some comments up earlier. I don't know where their comments went. If you're still there, I Fish in a Tie, we've traded some emails, and I'm really, if you ever like see I Fish in a Tie, Terry Traster on any channel, sit down, stop what you're doing, and watch the channel. He's going to be on my channel coming up soon, but he's got really insightful things to say. And by the way, I think Kenisha of Teach Yahweh left, but if you haven't already subscribed to her channel, please go support her channel. She's a lovely person. I'm really glad that she was here. Oh, yeah. And there's Terry Traster. Yeah. So this is Dr. Traster, I Fish in a Tie. We're really lucky that he's going to be on our channel in the coming weeks. I don't think we've settled a date yet, but I'm really looking forward to that. Dark Light Delirium, glad you're here too. All right. I'm sorry, Jared. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. As someone who isn't a Christian apologist or an apologist in any sense, like I typically, there may have been a period of like maybe 2 years in my early 20s where I was sort of like got on like an apologetic kick, and I quickly got out of that phase, thankfully, just because I realized what I was doing to the Bible and to arguments in general. Like I just realized, what am I doing when I sort of engage with the apologetics industrial complex, so to speak. And as one who sort of takes a similar approach to Tavo in terms of text criticism, exegetics in general, like just the exegetical method of analyzing a passage or a text as a literary body, and understanding how it functions literarily in its genre, how to read it in its genre.
We're losing you just a little bit, Jared.
Oh, I apologize. Am I sort of roboting?
It's as though you've got your foot on a guitar wah pedal, and like you're not pressing down, you're not Dorsey flexing enough on the
Okay.
on the more anterior aspect of the pedal.
Let me switch my input.
Okay. If you guys are using any sort of phaser or flanger, please remember to Dorsey flex. All right. let's
Okay, is this better?
That's better, actually. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So to not be long-winded on that, yes, I think text criticism is just an important first step when reading the scriptures. Like I said, I'm not an apologist, so the first thing when we tackle topics like this in the Hebrew scriptures is we first have to determine actually what a text is saying. Like, because oftentimes that's not actually straightforward. There's textual, grammatical, historical, and contextual issues that had to be hammered out first. And so it's good. I mean, we can go from text to text, so to speak, in answering like Max your question, your broad question in terms of how homosexuality was reacted to and responded to and quote unquote punished in that context. But I found that when we employ text critical analysis to these texts, I think they allow us to sort of bypass certain presuppositions about the text, and either, like Tavo said, have come to a little bit of epistemic humility, or just realize that there's that these texts actually say things and mean things differently than we take them to mean in our 21st century context. And again, that's not an apologetic response. It's just like, it's just saying sometimes we don't know what the text is actually saying until we do that rigorous study.
Fair enough. I think that's a good point as well. I want to bring into Chase a little bit more because your research is so fascinating, and I think Odin is going to flip out when you start talking more, Chase. But I'm glad you're here. Any thoughts on the things that we've said so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that you're having me up here and giving me the opportunity. I'll just say that my main focus, as we've discussed, is more science communication, and I don't try to sway anyone's beliefs one way or the other. I really just want, like, for example, if you are an apologist, and you want to try to build a case using science, I just want you to get the science correct. And then I also try to combat science denial, which as a medical doctor, Tavo, you know, could cause some serious issues with people declining medical care or declining other sorts of life-saving measures. So these have negative effects. I don't really think someone's personal belief has much of a negative effect. So that's where I kind of stay in my lane. So when you guys are discussing theology and the Bible, I usually just kind of stay on mute.
No, I mean, but your insights are really fantastic, and you've been on the receiving end of science denial, even in the short time that I've seen you on a couple of different panels. So it is kind of I think you're talking not only from the broad perspective, but also like I've heard people say things to you that are profoundly anti-scientific and very very display a lot of antipathy towards the sciences beyond that. So
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's this like strange idea that we are paid off to toe some kind of company line. One thing I got to tell you, if you're at home watching and you don't know what it's like to be a scientist, we don't make very much money. I'm not far from having a doctor in front of my name, and I do not make the money that a physician makes, despite the same amount of schooling and training. Honestly, they don't pay me enough to cover up the truth. If the earth was flat,
yeah,
if gravity wasn't real, if the for example, if the Big Bang absolutely said that there was a beginning, which it does not, that view's about 40 years out of date. If it did, I would tell you they're not paying me enough personally to keep it hidden.
Well, I mean,
How much do they got to pay you?
Yeah, I have a price for sure. I'm just we're commas and zeros short.
Yeah, I mean, I'm and you know, if I'll just underscore that I agree. Like that's one of the reasons I don't monetize this channel, because even when I make as soon as I started on YouTube, people were like, "Oh, you're only here to make money." And I thought that was sort of an interesting perspective, because it's not like I'm not monetized as a channel. I'm not on any Patreon. I'm not part of any ministry, but yeah, I think all sides are getting a little bit of the like, oh, you're just saying that because you're getting paid off to say that. So it's an unfortunate perspective, but from my standpoint, I can vouch for your constant sincerity in what you're saying, and and I think you've contributed meaningfully to like advancing people's understanding of like important scientific ideas.
I appreciate it. Yeah, there's and you've heard some of them personally, but you get in here and you hear science denial of both the specific and the general variety. So there was someone last night, I was on a panel saying that, for example, life breaks the laws of physics, and I asked them which law for probably 25 minutes. And they were trying to give me analogies and obfuscations and arguments. And I'm like, I don't need an analogy. I know the laws of physics. Just name the one that's broken and we can talk about that. And then you get others who are very quick to say something like the second law of thermodynamics. And then you have to explain the differences between isolated systems and non-isolated systems and what order and disorder actually mean. So we can get into those conversations, but you've, I know you've been on panels with me before where we've explicitly just seen people denying science outright with not even really a counter argument other than like, nuh-uh. Just kind of putting fingers in the ears.
But Chase,
how do you?
It wasn't always that way. Things are different in our modern discourse than they used to be. And I think I can't remember if you were around the channel when I said this, but it probably bears repeating. Originally, I'm talking about like Thomas Aquinas, Augustine of Hippo. There are many other people. The list goes, Philo of Alexandria. Like there are many people in the Jewish and Christian lineages who argued that science should be the limiter of our and the regulator of our theological thought, and not the other way around. And this was a common understanding that, like, that the stories that seem anti-scientific are meant to be allegorical. And then in the time of Luther, there was sort of a transition to saying, no, the Bible really needs to be interpreted more literally. And then things kind of quieted down for a while. And then towards the end of the 19th century, there was this push that came from, interestingly, these two oil tycoons who you wouldn't have thought would have had a dog in this fight, but they funded the equivalent of $300 million or so to promote a very fundamentalist verbal and plenary interpretation of the scriptural resources. Meaning it was Lyman Stewart, Milton Stewart and Lyman Stewart, these two brothers who were oil tycoons, who invested essentially the equivalent of hundreds of millions, or adjusted for the economic GDP, it was something like several $billion, in creating Christian fundamentalism, the verbal and plenary interpretation, and also a very literal interpretation of the Bible. And this kind of set the stage for what we are this era that we're currently in, where science and religion are at odds against each other, where, if you believe in the science, you're not supposed to believe in the religion, and vice versa, where, like, to believe in God, you have to sort of deny evolution. That's a relatively new thing that happened in the last century or so. So, and then there was the 1979 Chicago Statement on Inerrancy, but it wasn't always the case. It didn't used to be that you had to be at odds with the sciences to make a theologically aligned claim.
Yeah, and that's why I don't take a stance when it comes to, like, I'm not interested in debating Christianity versus atheism for that exact reason. If you have beliefs in a God, they lie squarely and explicitly outside the realm of science. All I'm asking is that if you would like to make arguments for your God, please keep them within the realms of things that we know, or have a good reason to combat the things that we know.
Yeah, on day 3 is saying what I said
Can I-
more succinctly and really great. And I hope you guys have a conversation as well. On day 3, I have a really excellent channel. You don't have to reject scientifically discovered facts to believe in the Bible. I would agree with that and endorse that fully. But Chase, what are some ideas in physics that have theological implications that haven't been fully explored? Because I think even though you can say, well, this is our understanding and this is sort of limited, and it doesn't mitigate theology necessarily. I think that there are some ideas from physics that have interesting theological implications that aren't fully explored. I mean, just the scope of the universe. I spoke earlier about the way Leonard Susskind talks about the universe as a hologram and I know that's become expropriated by some really pseudoscientific circles. But what are some other things that you want to talk about that are real things in physics, that are really real validated things that have at least theological implications? It doesn't have to be like a positive or negative implication. Just what are some interesting things that you found out and that should be informing our theological discourse and aren't?
So, and I do want to start by saying that this is a great question, and there is a distinction that I will make between things that we should consider if we're going to consider theology and things that we should stop considering. Which one you touched on is like denying evolution. I think you would agree that, like, we should stop denying evolution as an excuse for our theology. But going to the other side, to the side, things that we should consider, there's something very interesting. So our galaxy is in something called the KBC void. This void is, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's roughly 7 times the size that we thought a void could be.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Keep going.
Yeah, so an interesting consequence of that is that in order for life to exist, obviously we need to probably not be running into other solar systems and other stars colliding with galaxies. So being in a void like that almost guarantees that we're not going to collide with another galaxy in any sort of reasonable time frame. I think if you are a theist, that is something to strongly consider and ponder. There are other things, the nature of dark energy and dark matter. I do want to clarify, these are unrelated topics. They're both called dark because they don't interact with light. They're not like two different sides of any coin. But you're talking about roughly 96% of the universe's mass energy unaccounted for by our observation. This is definitely something to ponder. I mean, 4% is such an incredibly low number. It's not like we have a masterful understanding of that 4%. You have so those are two of the biggest ones. In mathematics, you have some interesting ideas about like internal consistencies. But I do think that they're not worth pondering if you're not a mathematician. I think you would risk kind of putting yourself into a Dunning-Kruger trap.
There is a question that I really want to ask you about, Chase, and it's on the screen now. I'll probably have to send you an email unless 21st Century Apologetics wants to come up. But if I'll send you this website that this guy made, 21st Century Apologetics. Are you in touch with mathematicians? Like he made this argument on the. I'll send you the argument that he made because I don't want to misrepresent it by what I say on the stream. But I'll send it. It's an interesting argument. I'll send it to you if you happen to know mathematicians who'd be interested in chewing on it. I'd love to know that.
Yeah, I have not looked into. It sounds like probably a numerology argument. The first 200 digits of pi meaning something besides being the ratio of the diameter to the circumference of a circle. I'm not sure I'm going to have any opinion on that besides it's just the numbers that come out of the math.
I'll send you the full argument because I think it's definitely not like simply numerology, but I'll send it to you because I don't want to misrepresent it unless James wants to hop up, but it also might be outside of your scope. Like I think there is sort of this thing where like I know I have friends who are physicists, and when I ask them questions about mathematics, they're like, that's the equivalent of somebody coming up to you as a doctor and asking you to look at their rash. So I think I don't want to like put you on the spot to make any conclusions about any arguments, but I'll send you an email about it because I think you might be interested in it, and if you have like resources to figure it out a little bit better than I have, but I wouldn't want to misrepresent it by saying, it's just numerology. But
and if that's not true, I obviously don't want to be strawmanning someone's argument without reading it.
Yeah. We'll talk about it more if he doesn't hop up.
Mr. Chase, are you a theist? Or
I'm not.
Non-theist.
I'm a non-theist.
Okay. So, what is it about the conversation about God that you find interesting? I mean, of course, you kind of stated your purpose, so to speak, but I'm assuming that you're engaging people, having these conversations, and allowing yourself to be a source of knowledge. I'm assuming as well, to correct people on certain things or to offer more information. Like what is it that you at least hope to gain by engaging in these conversations?
Yeah, that is a great question. I would say that the number one thing is like if you were to look at demographics, I don't know the exact number, but I suspect the number of flat earthers who are religious is absurdly overrepresented. I would suspect the number of people who think the universe is 6,000 years old or less are probably nearly 100% religious. So these are the things that I care about. I don't care about if you believe in God. I'm not interested in having that argument or debate or changing what anybody believes in any scenario about their religion. I respect your decision to believe what you want to believe. Whether or not I agree, it shouldn't matter. The only thing that I care about is getting people educated to the point where we're not using religion to deny the reality that we live in.
Well, to say that, can I ask a question about? I want to provide.
Could I just a quick homework thing? I know that Leo is in the chat waiting to hop on. So Leo, as soon as I can only have 6 people on at a time, but I'll bring you up as soon as there's space in the queue. But I think that was Set Scales who started talking. So sorry about that. Go ahead. Was that you, Set Scales?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Your mic is kind of hot to my ear, and then by the way, Robin and Dr. Kurt are really saying some kind things about Odin, who's I Am Batman. So nice to. Oh, and BBN is here too. All right, so we'll bring up BBN and Leo as soon as there's space. Sorry, go ahead, Set Scales.
So I was saying that you were talking about the void around the galaxy, and then you said that it was in depth what it was. So the way I interpret that as someone who's involved in Hermeticism and metaphysics and mythology is this is just a representation of a contained space, which is the galaxy, which has its own field of information around it, just like a planet or a solar system has an atmosphere or a heliosphere. And it relates even to the concept of a human aura, which is that our actions generate this energy field around us that is basically a reflection of us. So I would think that perhaps this void could be something similar, and that the reason we don't notice this around other galaxies is because we're far away to tell. And, now we're just looking at our galaxy and realizing that it has this void around it. And soon, I'm sure, or at least I would think that they might discover all other galaxies do as well. But what do you think of that?
Well, if all galaxies had a void, then there wouldn't be a such thing as a void. It would just be the average distance between galaxies.
I think Set Scales might need a little more of an understanding that we're actually talking about a void in the cosmic microwave background where there are just fewer things in a larger space where we see like an overall distribution of matter that's less.
Yeah, roughly 50% less than you would see in something you would consider not a void.
Yeah.
So there are still things in the void. Like we even have a cosmic neighbor with the Andromeda Galaxy. They're in the void with us, so to speak. So we're not like completely isolated in an ocean of nothingness. And there's particles and things in the void as well. It's like I said, it's simply defined as roughly defined as having 50% less density of matter per space than you would expect.
And I'm saying perhaps this void is like a field similar to the Earth's atmosphere or something, but is like creates a gravitational force of some sort or something else that makes or pushes the matter away. And it's not an empty void. That's what I'm suggesting, perhaps.
Yeah, I would say that's if you would like to speculate that you can, but there's no evidence to support it. There's no mathematics to support it. Gravity is an attractive force. But if that's something that you'd like to speculate about, then I won't stand in your way.
Well, I'm just relating it to the human body and what we know of the planet and the galaxy and how all these things have a field of information around it, like an atmosphere or a heliosphere or an aura. So I'm thinking perhaps this void is the galaxy's equivalent of that.
If that were true, Set Scales, then we would expect every galaxy to have a void around it, right? So the fact that it doesn't mean that this is not just simply like the normal, some sort of a normal haloing phenomenon. And besides, the void that we're in is much, much larger than, what just a halo would be, if that makes sense. There are sort of like dark matter halos around some galaxies that seem to have more gravitational effects, but again, that's an attractive, not a repulsive force. But
Yeah.
go ahead, Chase. You can like fact check me on some of this stuff.
No, you're correct. The only thing I would add is I would say you would also have to. It's not enough just to speculate that something is doing it. You would have to give me some kind of physical mechanism. So, for example, we know that the Earth has an atmosphere. It's held by gravity. The further away you get from Earth, gravity changes, which is why that you have a pressure gradient in the atmosphere. We know that I don't know what you mean by human aura, but if you just mean like kind of the heat that we release, then we know that that's from thermodynamic processes due to metabolic effects. So I would just say I would also need more than speculation that something arbitrarily is doing it, and more of a postulate of some kind of physical interaction that I could explore.
We've been talking for about an hour and 45 minutes. I wanted to make room for Leo if anyone wants to like hop off, but I'd love to bring Leo up, and I think Robin was saying that she might come up later as well. So Robin, if you want to hop up too, that'd be great. But as soon as we can, we'll make room for Leo.
And I'll drop off. I did have one question for Tavo, and for anybody else who wanted to comment on it.
Sure, Jared, fire away.
Before I step off, yeah, the question was, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Stephen Gould's non-overlapping magisteria, like in terms of like this relationship between science and religion that you're sort of talking about? Are you familiar with that principle from Stephen Gould's work?
I'm familiar with it. I've looked into it because somebody brought it up on a previous stream, and I haven't read his book, but I looked into it. But I'm not like I can't remember what I found when I looked at it. I wrote a book called Everything I Know About the Universe, where I talked about the there are sort of like there's a complementary relationship between religion and sciences, and I think this is something that's going to start being acknowledged. But maybe you can educate us a little bit more on what Stephen Gould is saying. And
Yeah. Well, he what he was postulating was that there's a body of knowledge and an epistemology that is accessible through science, and that there's a concomitant body of knowledge and an epistemology that's relatable to, or that's maybe located within spirituality, religion, and that those two magisteria that they're not overlapping in the sense that one shouldn't be like trying to coerce or affect the other knowledge area. And there's things that you can legitimately know epistemologically through religion, but that's a different body of knowledge that that science isn't necessarily supposed to encroach on, and that religion is not supposed to encroach on. It might be some sort of like a separation of church and state type thing, but I mean, what I'm getting at is that there are things that you can legitimately know, and there's a certain knowledge and epistemology that is related to that's accessible in religion, but not in science.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to dig into that more before I have a stronger opinion. But I think you're like on the right panel to ask about that specific question, because I know Odine's going to have some thoughts on that. Chase and Max will probably have some thoughts on that, and Set Scales will have some thoughts on that too. But it does seem like it's aligned with something that I wrote a book about, which is my whole book, which was called Everything I Know About the Universe, which I put out under a totally different pseudonym, is about the complementary nature of that. So it seems like it would be aligned with what he's saying. But anyone else, I'll open it up to the room. Anyone else have any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say preliminarily, I mostly agree. I hope that was even reflected in how I started with, any kind of claims of God that you would like to make an argument for will likely fall outside the realm of science and scientific inquiry. I would only have the one caveat that when religions make claims that do fall within the realms of things that are repeatable, testable, and falsifiable, and then they are falsified, I do think that the religious claim should be altered rather than trying to find ways to argue with the scientific data.
Understandable.
So
Dr. Kurt's got a bunch of zingers in the chat. I know you're being sarcastic. I thought that was funny, so that's why I keep highlighting your comments. Go ahead, whoever's next.
I'll go ahead and drop off, Tavo. And
wait, Mr. Jared.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Don't run off yet, man. Let me throw my 2 cents in there. So
Sure.
I'm a theist, by the way. I'm a Christian, Trinitarian Christian, and I've been that for probably like around 10 or so years. I don't remember. It's been a while, but one of the things that I've been working on more recently is to try to come up with ways of how people can reconcile what they see in scripture with science, to kind of show that there's no contradiction when you actually when you actually read what is written. For all intents and purposes, the Bible isn't a science book. Yes, it comments on reality, right? But the purpose of the book isn't to make claims or to explore reality, the like physical reality. It is more so about, it's more focused on tackling human nature and giving us tools that will allow for us to live in love with each other and nature. Unfortunately, a lot of Christians ignore parts of the Bible where we are supposed to be stewards of the planet, but I
Sure.
digress when it comes to that. But that's one of the things that I've been focusing on recently, because I don't see any contradiction when you actually look at what one side says and what the other side says, and a lot of the times it's not even commenting on reality per se. What it is doing is that it's taking what the reader already experiences and knows about reality and making a particular point. So that would be beneficial for them. So yeah, I agree with the idea that you can look at the data that science has to offer, right? And you can make an inference to the best explanation. You can interpret that data whichever way you want. Question is it something that is coherent, and it is, does it contradict anything else that we already know about reality, at least from a scientific perspective? So we don't have to pick between one or the other, and we don't have to necessarily say, "Hey, I can't reconcile these things, so now I'm just going to give up my faith." So that's part of what I've been kind of working on recently. I sent Tavo a couple of my papers.
They're really
Hopefully,
fascinating. Odin, I think you're going to have some great conversations with Chase down the road.
yeah, that would be cool.
There is a question on the screen. I don't know if whoever wants to answer this can answer it. H. Pi and the Shroud of Turin are well within scientific study. Agree with that part. Do you think those who can't affirm them are predestined to take the mark of the beast? Anyone can weigh in on this one. And then after that, we'll introduce Leo and get Leo to do some talking.
I don't see the Shroud of Turin has no theological significance whatsoever. It doesn't comment. It doesn't have anything to do with salvation. It doesn't have anything to do with people loving their neighbors. Um, I don't know if it's an actual. I doubt it's an actual relic. But then again, I don't put much stake into those things. The Bible has its comments on humans putting a lot of stake into inanimate objects that they see as being holy. No, that is not an argument against icons or anything like that. But there are quite a few scriptures that addresses the idea of us putting our faith in stuff like that. That's just my comment for now.
I'll just piggyback on that. Yeah, in talking about things that are in scientific study and things that are pertaining to faith and spirituality, science can tell you about the world, and so that you can know the world. But faith is and spirituality is about how to be in the world. And just related to this question about the Shroud of Turin, and I mean, no, the Shroud of Turin is not going to give me practical direction or inspiration about how to be in the world, like how to what the way of life. So the way of life is if we're talking the scriptures, is bound up and manifested in the commandments of God, and that's what you look at as in a sense a mirror to look at yourself and hear the words, and not just hear them, but then go and do them. Because if you don't do them, then you're one who, in a sense, looks at yourself in the mirror and then turns away and forgets who you are. So that's my stab at the question there. I mean, taking the mark of the beast in relation to what that is in the scriptures is related to idolatry. It's related to denying the God who created the heavens and the earth within that. Within what's revealed in the scriptures regarding that. So that's my tag on that. And I'll go ahead, if anybody else has any questions for me, I'm going to go ahead and make room for others.
Well, Jared, really great to chat with you. I think this is probably the first time that we've chatted. So I hope we get to hear more from you. Your perspective is interesting. And there are definitely a lot of follow-up questions that I have for you. So just refresh my memory when because I tend to sometimes confuse each person with somebody else. So refresh my memory next time you hop up, and I'll because I want to ask you questions about like why you're not aligned with apologetics. Like that seemed like an interesting story that we didn't get into enough.
Sure. Yeah. And if I show up in the chat, it's under Refining Exegetics. That's the name of my channel.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's a great. That sounds like interesting. If you ever want to email me and have another conversation, you can also shoot me an email. My email is on my channel description, but it's just drtavosanabria@gmail.com. So just
yes, I did see
in front
that.
of my name at Gmail.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Perfect.
Reach out anytime.
All right. Blessings, y'all.
Yeah.
Have a good one. So I would like to say I read this 21st Century Apologetics, the HPI. I would like to respectfully keep my opinions on that to myself.
Oh, sure. That's fine. Yeah. And BBN is here too. So I think I think my next task was to try and get Leo to ask some questions too. Had we circled back to that? Yeah, Leo, good to have you here.
Hi, thank you. Hi, guys. I'm over 18. I believe in God.
Good to see you, Leo. Thanks for hopping on.
Sure.
You're on the air. What questions can we answer?
Oh, well, I heard, I don't know who said that we need to accept evolution. Can any one of you try to convince me of that?
The need to accept evolution? Oh, it looks like BBN hopped off. So I'm gonna, it looks here, let me just, oh no, BBN's, okay, I'm gonna remove BBN and then re-add BBN. Okay, hopefully you're here now, BBN. So you're asking
can you hear me?
Yeah, hey BBN, good to see you.
Good to see you, bud.
So Leo, your question is, can any of us argue for evolution to you?
Oh, yeah, why should I accept evolution? I heard that we should accept it. So
Typically, we accept things for which there are evidence for.
Yeah, I have no problem doing it, but I think Chase should do it.
Yeah, so I will start by saying this is out of my lane as a physicist. I don't study evolution, but we are required in undergraduate studies to take the basic courses. But you have things, evolution, from a biologist point of view, it's an extremely well understood, very tested with a lot of evidence for it. You have things like, have you heard of endogenous human retroviruses?
no.
So these are viruses that are inserted into the genome. They get embedded into the DNA and they stay in the exact same spot and they're passed down generation to generation. So you have things, you have these retroviruses that are in the exact same spot in us as they are in other animals. And the farther you remove us from the animal, so for example, our closest relatives are the chimpanzees, and then you can go to the other great apes and continue to extrapolate outwards. What you see is a continuous reduction in the amount that we share and in the exact same spot that they have them, indicating that there is a common ancestry.
Could it be that God put it there?
Sure, a unicorn could have done it as well.
Okay.
I mean, for me, it I would underscore Chase's perspective. We have a lot of individual lines of evidence for evolution, and there's no compelling reason to abandon it. And to me, there's
what's your best one? What would you say?
Probably the body of fossil evidence.
Okay.
Let me remove BBN again. And I think BBN keeps dropping off and rejoining. BBN, can you hear us?
Fossils are fossils are dead animals, right? They are just buried and dead. I don't see them changing into a different animal.
No, but they change over time, right? And we have records of animals that change morphologies over time and through lines and morphological features and phenotypes.
Right, that's evolution, but what's the evidence?
No, that is the evidence, just the phenotypic themes that happen over time. I mean, there's a bunch of other reasons of genetic, there's genetic evidence, the way, the way we can trace things back genetically, right? Like there's certain ticks that happen in apes, and you can okay, no, I think we lost BBN again, but I think BBN will rejoin. BBN's really great, so hopefully he'll be able to rejoin. But there's like ticks that happen on our body, and we can actually look at how far apart those ticks are, and we can look at ticks that happen on different body parts, and we can trace that back to when human mammalian hair patterns changed, and why the fact that we have less hair than other apes and stuff like that. So I'll go ahead and bring up Chronicle, even though hopefully BBN will be able to rejoin as well. But I guess, but Leo, if there's evidence for evolution and there's no evidence against evolution, what would be the argument against the evolution?
Well, I don't know about you guys, but all I see is dogs producing dogs, right? And cows.
Yeah, that's called the law of monophyly. That's predicted by evolution.
Can you explain that to me? What that means?
Yes. So you could just let's move further back, right? Would you say that things with a backbone produce things with a backbone?
Say that again. Sorry.
So would you say that animals with a backbone produce other animals with a backbone?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a common trait. It's called a vertebrate. Every single vertebrate after that will be within the category of vertebrate and will have a backbone unless some sort of other mechanism happens, but you will be in that category. So vertebrates produce vertebrates. All you did was pick the most specific of dogs producing dogs. That's at the current end. If you were to back it up, you would see vertebrates producing vertebrates, and then you would see crustaceans producing crustaceans, but you would still have to find a way to account for the different types of crustaceans and the different types of vertebrates that are sharing certain percentages of DNA that match up exactly with what you would expect if they came from a common ancestor.
Right, but if we go back in the past, there was a creature that didn't have a backbone, and after it, there was a creature that had a backbone. So that law is not applying.
It's not like a backbone shows up, right? There's like notochord development that happens over iterative, generations, and then that notochord later forms into like a vertebral column. So it's not like and then before that there's like proto-spinal cord things, and so it's not like all of a sudden there's a creature who's born with a backbone.
Right. Is there an evidence of a proto-spinal cord?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a lot of evidence of creatures that have that are sort of on the cusp of becoming vertebrates.
Okay. All right. I don't know if someone else wants to say something. That's all from me.
Yeah. No, we just hope you come around. Like it's like Tavo is a Christian and a believer and doesn't have to deny it. You can have your faith and you can enjoy the fruits of science as well.
I mean, we see like in my field, we actually see things evolving in human time frames. So I understand when you look at a dog, it's tempting to be like, well, I have roughly the same lifespan as a dog, and the dog doesn't give rise to a duck, and therefore like there's no way that like one species can come from another. But I think first of all, that's an argument from personal incredulity, and second of all, I think that doesn't have enough epistemic humility behind the presumption, right? What I see in my lifetime, in my observation, in my time scale, ought to recapitulate the laws of nature in the universe, right? there's a flaw there in epistemic humility, right? You're saying, my perspective ought to be an accurate representation of what the universe has, but our perspective is, flawed and narrow and definitionally short in time frame compared to geological and cosmological timescales. Having said that, like there's I see examples of evolution happening. Like for instance, the genes for antibiotic resistance in bacterial cells are very, very different than they were when I even started medical school, right? Those genes have totally like changed their landscape several times over. So much so that like now there's patterns of antibiotic resistance that are really genotypic features of species that are evolving really over time. Now, bacteria have tens of thousands of generations in the span of like a single human day, so it's a very different time scale. But we can see those things changing over time. Like for instance, if I gave every human amoxicillin every single day, we would start seeing much more profound changes in bacterial genotypes over time.
Hey, brother Leo, do you have um any access to any like formal scientific education? Like, I mean, there are like Khan Academy is pretty good. So if you want to learn about how, what evolution is, they do a pretty good job on various different levels to explain what it is, because there's, there are a lot of theists who see the process of evolution as essentially something that God put in place to maintain speciation and for life to exist, right? And some will vary on, if or whenever God would have intervened at whichever point. But if I were you personally, um, I would do more learning about what it actually is, because it's not like this nebulous thing where people are saying, "Hey, natural selection, this and that." It's way more complicated than that. For all intents and purposes, it's very mechanistic in its function day to day. So I would suggest that you probably look at, go check out Khan Academy and, take some biology classes with them. It's totally free.
That's
Watch some
so
videos.
you seem convinced of evolution, right? So what's your
Yeah,
best
I mean,
evidence?
I don't have any reason to deny something that I could see for myself.
You see evolution for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you've never taken biology classes, you've never seen, how, like how genomes work. You've never seen bacteria literally like evolving over different multiple generations. That's not something you've ever witnessed before?
I'm sure you observe bacteria in the lab. They will
Yeah,
produce
yeah.
bacteria all the time.
Yeah, but we didn't change the mechanism in terms of how they function, right? We just put them in a specific environment for them to function as is, to learn what they do, why they do certain things. We didn't add or change anything about them.
Right. Okay.
There certainly are interesting insights about like, is evolution incomplete? I would argue that there's an argument to be made that we don't yet understand all the mysteries of evolution, but that's why the field of biology is still a growing field. So, if
Uh,
there's stuff that we're just getting into that are like, for instance, like the transition from Anhias to whales is like really interesting. It happened faster than we would have estimated. We don't really understand deep sea gigantism. We don't really understand island dwarfism, but those are interesting things to study. But they need to be studied within the framework of an understanding of biology. In other words, if you try to like seize upon any of those arguments to disprove evolution, then you'd be on much more tenuous ground.
I'm more interested in a thermodynamic and information aspect of life, which you've seen in one of the first papers I sent you. Um,
Oh yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. I can't. You should. I mean,
I'm gonna
while you're
read.
on with Chase, you should try and get like some of the. You should ping him on some of the things that you're talking about. I know we have BBN and okay. But before we do that, actually, let me just give some space to Chronicle because Chronicle wanted to join the chat. So, Chronicle, I'm really glad you're here. Any questions for me or for the panel?
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead, Chronicle. Good to have you here. Nice to have you back.
Can okay, okay. I just want to talk about Christianity.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Let's do it.
So I have many questions. It will take 2 or 3 hours. Okay. So first, I just want to
You
say
said it's going to go 2 or 3 hours.
okay, okay. So I want to organize a debate. Okay, you will organize the debate on your own channel. I will give you the proof. But now I have only one question. I will join the next time when you organize the debate.
Yeah,
Okay, I
let's
have
do
a
it
question.
one at a time. I think it's good, but yeah.
Okay, can you check the Exodus 31:15 and John?
Chronicle, can you maybe turn down the music?
Okay, there's a temple nearby me, so I can.
Oh, okay, okay, all right. What would you like me to pull up?
So okay, so the you know what is Sabbath?
What is a bath?
Yeah, there is a day that Bible says you cannot do work on that day. If
Oh, the
someone do
Sabbath.
that,
Sure,
okay, okay, okay. So it must be killed. So I have a question. Can you
sure.
check Exodus?
What's your question, BBN? I mean, Chronicle. Go ahead.
Okay,
What's your question?
okay. So basically, they says you cannot do work on that day. Then Jesus work on that day. So Son of God is doing work against Bible, work against God. So why they don't kill him? Is he really the Son of God?
I can answer this.
Um, yeah, sure.
Okay,
I mean, I'm
why you
happy.
can't answer?
I think anyone can answer this, but I guess I'm happy to like ping a couple of answers. I mean, so for example, why didn't they kill him? Well, they did kill him, but I think if there's a lesson there to be learned, I think the lesson is, should we really take a human life because of an infraction like that? And I think the bigger point that Jesus is advocating is
Okay,
he's
so
advocating
basically,
the very
if
hold on now because I want to turn this over to Odin as well. He's advocating for the very lesson that we've been
so
underscoring throughout this whole
so
conversation, which is that
so Bible is
meticulousness.
saying
Hold on, Chronicle. What he's arguing for is that scrupulousness with respect to rules
so
is always subordinate to kindness, right? What work does Jesus actually do on the Sabbath? He heals somebody, right? So his whole point in doing that is saying, don't strain
okay.
the
Check
gnat
the
to
verse.
swallow the
Okay,
camel, right? It's
okay.
really
Check
important
the verse.
that you value kindness overall rather than scrupulousness and deference to specific rules.
Okay, check the verse.
Some people are saying in the chat Chronicle that the music is still loud. If you can do anything or move further away from it.
Okay, I can. Okay, I will send you all the contradiction. I will not talk. You show me the
Yeah,
verse.
which verse do you
Okay,
want me to pull up? I'm happy to pull up the verse. Well, and then we can let Odin answer the question as well while we're pulling up the verse.
okay. Exodus
So
31:15.
Chronicles. Um,
Wait, Exodus
Okay,
31:15.
okay. I send you the in studio chat. Check everything.
Okay, Exodus 31:15.
Uh,
Seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day is to be put to death.
yeah. So Chronicles. The let's let's address this like parts by part, right? So the reason why Jesus would not or could not be put to death for doing anything on the Sabbath really is because he's made clear that he is Lord of the Sabbath. basically he's saying that he's the one that gave the law in the first place. And so him being the one who gave the law, which means he's making the divine claim that he's God, he can do work on the Sabbath. And he's also said that him and his Father are always working. So they don't have any legal right to approach Jesus from that particular perspective. The other important part is that Jesus clarified that doing good on the Sabbath is not breaking the Sabbath. What breaks the Sabbath is when you do things for your profit, for your profiting. So you can volunteer on the Sabbath, for example. You can save an animal on the Sabbath, for example. You won't be breaking the Sabbath. And Jesus never did anything for himself on the Sabbath either. So he never broke the Sabbath. Plus, the Sabbath is there for us to actually get a rest day. It's a divine day off. Enjoy it.
Does that help, Chronicle? That's a great answer, Odin. Also,
No, it's not.
what's that? Sorry, Chronicle. Did we answer your question?
So God made a law and Jesus broke it. Simple as that. Nothing else.
Well, but if Jesus is God, then he claims authority over the law, you see. And
No, he is
moreover,
not God. He is not God.
But even if
but
I were to
then your
grant you
argument
that
becomes begging the question.
he never broke the Sabbath, because you can do good on the Sabbath. When you do good and you volunteer, you're not earning anything. You're doing good. So he still didn't break the Sabbath.
I mean, there's a lot of reconciliations of that, if that's helpful, Chronicle.
Can y'all hear me?
Oh yeah, BBN. Yeah, you're back on.
Yeah, cool. Just making sure. I've been having problems hearing y'all. Like someone will go out, I can't hear them. I can see it like moving, so it's like I'm having the worst luck with that.
That's a good question. I appreciate questions like that. We've been on for about 2 hours and 20 minutes, so we'll probably just go a few more minutes, and then we'll probably start winding it down. But I know Macintosh is here. Oh, okay. I'll go ahead and bring up Macintosh. So Chronicle, if you're still listening, which I hope you are, I did get your email. It looks like you put a bunch of contradictions, and I'll happily look over those. And you're welcome to call in every week, and we'll just go one by one and talk through each of them. I don't personally find the one that you pointed out to be an invalidation of any divine authority from Jesus. But anyways, Macintosh, good to see you.
All right, well, hey, I'm gonna log out one more time and log in because I can't hear anyone anymore.
Oh no, we lost you. You lost the audio again, BBN?
Hey, hello.
Hey, Macintosh, can you hear us?
Hi. I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, really good to see you.
Oh, great to see you too, guys.
Damn, this guy's got the smooth radio voice. Okay.
I have a radio voice. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, you also have a very nice voice, by the way.
Yeah, Odin has gotten a lot of love during this very chat for a nice voice. Yeah, Macintosh Pro. Glad you're on the channel. We've in fact, I owe you an apology. We did like a quick chat, and it was a really compelling like conversation snippet, and I just haven't had the time to edit it into a Talking with Tavo video, because I do want to put that up. Yeah, who's got the best radio voice on the channel?
I can only hear
I would
one
say
person.
Tavo has it. We have to.
My channel, so you have to say that. But.
Yes, of course. No, but actually you do. You have a great voice, man.
If you're having a medical or mental health emergency, please hang up and call 911. To make an appointment for MRI, press 1. Yeah, I do that a lot on that.
Okay, I'll call you Siri Tavo. How about that?
I'm not going to read Dark Light Delirium's comment, but thank you for the kind words. All right. So BBN, I think, is hopping off, but just to rejoin. But yeah, Macintosh, what's on your mind? We only have a few minutes left, but
I know.
let's
I just
chat.
wanted to make it very, very simple and very fast. I'm a
Yeah,
Christian.
sure. Nice to see you.
I'm a Christian. I've been Christian for not very long, maybe 2 years, something like that. But the situation is that I do believe in evolution, which most Christians don't. And I try to bring the idea that they have an incorrect view of evolution, for sure, because it's based on many myths that have been created inside of the Christian sphere. And they don't accept a lot of the things that are happening in the scientific area. So, yeah, I'm a Christian. I believe in evolution, and I know a lot of Christians that do believe in evolution too. And we don't deny it. I don't know why it's incompatible. That's all. And that's my only topic or argument. I can make arguments with the Bible and stuff, but I don't know. I just wanted to make my point that evolution is true, and it doesn't conflict with Christianism, nor does science conflict with Christianism at all. I haven't found that situation to be true.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on, I've seen stuff get floated onto channels that I are very anti-scientific, and so I'm kind of sympathetic to both sides of the conversation. But yeah, I agree with you. I think if you talk to most, if you talk to people who are having the debates on YouTube, you're going to wind up with a very different spectrum of beliefs and a very different idea space, but a very different Overton window or whatever it is. But if you're just talking to Christians, most of them are fine accepting evolution. I would argue it's the overwhelming majority. If you include probably Christians who think that sort of disbelief in evolution is something that is worthy of condemnation, that's a tiny sliver of a minority of Christianity who actually believe that if you believe in evolution, then that's somehow condemning or condemnable. Anyways, yeah,
I'll be talking to one later.
I'd say don't use the Bible as a science book. That's all.
Yeah. Well said. I think if God did make us with relatively large brains to figure out the world around us, then we're somehow manifesting our purposefulness by understanding the world more deeply. And many people inside of Christianity and outside of Christianity have expressed that knowledge is the highest form of expression of love. So to me, if you're gaining knowledge of the universe, and if you're passionate about gaining knowledge of the universe, you're in a sense loving a creation of God, and it's in essence you're sort of loving God. So I think you're fulfilling Jesus' first and most central commandment to love God by understanding the universe. All right, well, we're pretty much out of time, and I should probably start winding things down now. What we do with the last few minutes? Oh, actually, Macintosh, feel free to say anything else you'd like to say, or BB, and you can add some other comments because you joined fairly late. And
Yeah, I keep having issues.
Yeah. Do you want? Who do we?
I got something to say, but it won't be. It'll be short because I got to go soon too.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah. Well, we got you, BBN. Go ahead and say what you'd like to say.
Okay. Chase, can you hear me? Is he still here?
Chase is still here. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Cool. Hey, Tavo, I don't have any way to send a link right now, but if you could like connect him with that podcast I do that you and I go to, if he has time.
No. I don't know. All right. Okay. Yeah.
I would love for him to come by, man, because that guy drives me bananas, and I would love to have him if he has time. If not, maybe at least one time. It's like, but because he seems like I like you. I'm just now seeing you, Chase. You seem like a really smart dude. I like your style.
Chase,
I'd like to. Yeah, I'd like to talk to you more about stuff, but we just don't have the time. So, yeah, other than that, I have a lot to say about a lot of the stuff that was said tonight, but we don't have no time to do it in. So I'll just leave it at that, and hopefully I'll have a better luck next time or next Monday. But yeah, Chase, it was. All you guys are interesting. I just heard mostly. I was listening to Chase talk earlier, and I like the way that he frames stuff, and I like a guy that actually went to school and has something to back things up with. that type of thing. So it was nice talking to all y'all, and I'm still here for a few minutes. So
And we've got a video coming out, a talking with Tavo video. We're going to have like Chase more prominently featured. I think it's going to be really fun. And Odin, I kind of cut you off, but right before we go to the closing statements, do you want to ask anything of Chase?
Actually, yeah. So Chase, what is your disposition when it comes to people who come up with or show alternate explanations for, I guess, whatever body of evidence they want to use to say, hey, this is my explanation in terms of how the universe works. Is that something that excites you, or are you more on guard when it comes to that type of stuff? Basically, someone
So
who goes against the consensus, but they're doing it in a methodological way that in terms of how it would be done in science, basically.
yeah, so there's a huge range. This actually kind of aligns with what Tavo was saying about if you hear enough people's beliefs, you're going to get a gigantic range from the most reasonable to the most ridiculous. Um, there's an excellent piece of work written by Sean Carroll, Dr. Sean Carroll of, I think he's at maybe he's at Johns Hopkins now. But it's I don't remember the exact title, but it's something along the lines of how incredibly difficult it is to be a heretic in science. When you start, so just to let you guys know, I'm in a PhD program. I don't like to disclose too much publicly, but it's a respected R1 university. And when I was an undergraduate, you start as a freshman. You're learning physics 1. You're learning basic calculus, and you have all these ideas where this could be wrong. And I had this idea about space-time. Man, I had so many that I thought, like, this is, everybody's missed this, but I found it. And then as you learn more about how it works in the details, so much physics is done in very complicated mathematics, that you realize the layman's explanation or the words used to convey the idea don't quite get you there like the mathematics do. So if you are going to go against what the consensus is, that's the main thing I would say, is that make sure you have a very rock solid understanding of what the consensus is and why it is so. It's not necessarily that I'm on guard or not on guard. It's just that I'm usually neutral until I hear certain things that will trigger me to lean one way or the other about what this person is saying. So some things to look out. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I thought you were finished.
No, you're fine.
So you don't have like your own ideas where you can look at an aspect of your field and you're like, what if I take this particular approach? What would happen? So you don't do any kind of, exploration on your own.
No, absolutely. I'm actually writing a paper right now on my own idea for ways to make progress in the quantum gravity problem, but it's based in years spent studying and understanding the quantum gravity problem. So I'm not against revolutionary science. I think it's great. I think the more ideas we have to explore, the better. It just comes down to the idea itself. How well researched is it, and how well can you justify it? But I'm a theoretical physicist. That's what I do, is basically mathematically speculate.
We did
Okay, cool.
we did solve the quantum gravity problem. That was like 2 or 3 videos ago. Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
I believe that gravity is the sugar particle with it's just sugar with the ingredient X. That's all.
Sugar, spice, and everything nice.
Yeah, so there are some things to look out for if you guys at home just watching want to know. So there's one thing you'll notice about me. You'll also notice about Tavo. Anybody who's worked in the field of science, we don't speak in a lot of absolutes. We don't speak with extreme confidence unless we're correct. We usually quantify strong statements as it's possible but unlikely, rather than it's impossible or definitely can't happen. So anytime you see this undue confidence, anytime you see these extremely strong statements being made, and then the other thing is going against data is going to be much, much harder than having an opinion on things that are already mathematically plausible.
Yeah, it's not so much against like going against the data that's available and what we observe necessarily. It's more so like, how do we interpret the evidence in terms of um, how should I put this? This ultimately what it's trying, what should we take away from it? And so, I think a lot of people have a rigid idea um, of science as a function, right? And it's like I don't think they understand that if you're the scientist or whatever you are, who's made a breakthrough, who somehow, you know, um, come up with a better explanation, that is big. So it's not like it's a situation where, it's just like, okay, a consensus exists, so no one is doing nothing to either challenge the consensus or put out their particular own ideas and theories out there to see what works. And like, I think that's one of the things science education could do a little bit better, in terms of um, letting people who are laymen understand about the process, because a lot of people, both theists and non-theists, they look at science as essentially the arbiter of truth about reality, right? And for all intents and purposes, you know, it's really just what is the best explanation. And we come up with the reason why consensuses exist is because whatever that has been discovered, right, it's been tested repeatedly and we've gotten consistent results, and so a consensus builds around that. And so I think that's part of science communication that's missing, in my opinion, is to show that, hey, you know, the goal is always to get the more and more understanding of the universe and how it functions. I think that's something that should be promoted a little bit more. I think it'll get rid of a lot of the distrust of the science community, amongst theists in particular. But that's just my take on science in a general. As someone who actually loves it, I don't see any contradiction between my faith and science. Tavo can, I'm more so on the philosophy aspect of things. Um, but if Tavo could attest based on his, reading of my papers, um, it doing science isn't easy, people. It takes a lot of time, reading and studying, and you know, if you're not formally educated, as I'm not, right? A lot of my the knowledge and understanding I have comes from, free and open resources offered by Khan Academy, MIT, and a few others. But they are there, and people can go and they can look for themselves to see, you know, what methodology that's used to to see how things function, how tests are done. A lot of that stuff is open. Not saying everything is open. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's proprietary, for business reasons. Um, but yeah, a lot of the data and the information is out there, and I think we should promote that a little bit more.
Jennifer, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Really nice to see you, Jennifer. Good to see you. LA Apologetics 2.0 has a really great channel, so I'm going to go watch that short immediately when we're done. Any other closing statements that you all want to say? I think we're going to wrap up pretty soon, and I have to wrap up. And I can offer a quick closing thought just so that people know it. I've got some really cool content coming up. I've got a video that I'm working on finishing that's a long form video that I've been researching for a while. Hope to finish that soon. I've got a Talking with Tavo video that I recorded today with Janice Hutchison, really great author, incredible woman. She's about to have her 95th birthday, so we're really excited for that. And I've got a big night coming up, starting as soon as the stream is done. So if you all want to kind of think good thoughts at me, or pray for me, or wish me good luck, that'd be great. I won't say too much more about that, but it's personal. But I think I'm sure you'll all hear about it pretty soon. But any other thoughts? Closing statements?
Tavo, are you coming out as not being an owl?
No, I'm coming out as being Tyto rather than Strix. Titanidae versus Strigidae are the two genuses of owls.
That's fair.
Yeah, that was a dumb joke. All right, okay. Who's next?
No, that's all I have. I really appreciate you guys letting me bend your ear and talk about the things that I'm passionate about.
I just want to say, like, about the whole evolution thing. I know there's a lot of people who follow this channel that seem to not believe in it, but I think they should actually talk to an expert in the field instead of asking like a physicist to explain it. They're like that's no insult against Chase, but they're like actual, like there are real channels with evolutionary biologists who can explain this better than anyone in this chat.
Oh, I appreciate that, Max. I think that's good advice. Yeah, I thought Chase did a good job of qualifying.
Yeah. Like he did he did good in the circumstances. But like I know the channel is called Gutsick Gibbon, which is a kind of a weird name, but Erica is she's an expert in evolutionary biology. It's a great channel to check out.
Max, I don't think I've made you a mod, but why don't you, let me see if I can make you a mod so that you can put up a link to her channel. Because that'd be something that'd be useful for me to have. Let's see. When's the last comment? Are you a mod on the channel?
I am not a mod. Do you want me to leave a comment so you can easily find me?
Yeah, and I'll make you a mod, and then you can add a comment about the her channel, because I'm kind of curious to see it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah,
okay,
that's why.
Now you're a moderator in case you want to add a comment on the channel.
But yeah, that's why I also qualified what I said with I'm not a biologist. I have a couple of classes in the basics, but my expertise is in physics. But there's also one, if I could recommend, it's called In Light of Evolution by Forrest Valkai. I know he's a prominent atheist, but this is not a religious series. It's a 4-part series where he starts from the beginning and really tries to explain evolution in a digestible way.
Great. Yeah, I know Erica is neutral. Like, she doesn't talk about religion at all. She says you can be a Christian. She has a long series talking to a young Earth creationist. She says you can still be a Christian. She's just explaining evolution to him.
Yeah, most of us outside of a vocal minority are not really interested in people's personal beliefs. We're just really trying to get people on board with reality.
Yeah. And I guess I'll send good vibes to Tavo, but that's about all I have to say.
No, glad you're here, Max, and yeah.
Well, I'll pray for you, Tavo, since they ain't got no prayers to give for you.
No. Are you kidding? No, I feel very supported by this community. So, yeah, I feel very supported, and I'm very lucky to have such a supportive, wonderful, lovely community. I mean this to every person who's listening, and I mean this to every person in the chat right now. You're all very beautiful. You're all very kind. I appreciate you all very much. This has been a really wonderful discussion, one of my favorites so far. So keep your eyes open for new content. Anyone else closing words? Did we skip anyone? Okay, well, great. Well, I'll probably end it there. But you all have a really wonderful evening, and I hope that you all have a really wonderful week. I've got some new content coming up, so just keep your eyes on the channel. And if you haven't subscribed already, we're really getting close to 1,000 subs, which is something that I feel pretty good about. So I'm really excited for that as well. And I really appreciate you all. Thanks all for joining, and thanks everyone who commented in the chat. Some really funny comments in the chat and some really positive comments. And I really mean it. This has been a really positive conversation. It's been a really wonderful chat to have with all of you, and I'm glad that you all are here. All right, hope you all have a really wonderful evening.